or tiny side room upstairs restroom with the community school coordinator. Our ELD coordinator uses a tiny space in the workroom where the die cutters, copy machines, and file storages are.
Thank you, Tanya. Now we're going to hear from another teacher that is also community school coordinator, Jacqueline Walker from Baldwin Hills Elementary.
Good morning. My name is Jacqueline Walker, and I am the community school coordinator at Baldwin Hills Elementary Pilot and Gifted High Ability Magnet. We are in cohort 2. This is our second year as a community school. We are proud to be one of the few highly gifted magnet elementary schools in LAUSD that also serves a predominantly Black student population. We are a California distinguished school. I am here today because the co-charter on our school undermines our work as a community school. Baldwin Hills is a proud community school, but we need space to grow as a community school. If the board truly cares about supporting and expanding the community school model, it must take immediate action to allow our community school to succeed and thrive. Through our status as a community school, we partner with the Healthy Start program. I'm sure you are very familiar with that. This is a district initiative that brings a full-time position. The staff person needed a private space to have confidential conversations with families seeking help, as well as needed space for fresh food storage for our families and our unhoused population. Baldwin could not give the Healthy Start Navigator space due to the co-location. So our Healthy Start personnel was relocated to a school which offers that space needed. We only benefit from her services once a week. We cannot continue to be co-located and denied enough space for our school. LAUSD should support us as a community school and follow the UTLA contract and not renew our co-location. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Tanya. I will leave these letters here for you all. Just a reminder that Superintendent Carvalho, you support community school. You're on record supporting community schools. So is the entire Board of Education that's sitting here with us. And we ask that you take that, you support that, and you make sure that co-locating charters are out of our community schools so that they can thrive, succeed, and really become the vision that we all have for community schools, as you all have stated, as I believe is also referenced in your strategic plan. So again, Alex Orozco, UTLA, we have a lot of parents here. They'll be speaking public comment as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Orozco. We'll make sure those letters get distributed to the board and the superintendent.
Mr. Chair, I do remember, though, that we did say that we were going to make an effort not to co-locate at community schools. So at some point, I'd like to know whether that's still the policy. Well, it was a suggested part of it when we first began them, but I don't think it's ever been carried out, and I would like it reviewed so that we see whether or not that should be a policy.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. The superintendent's here, and I see some nods from his team, so we'll be looking into that. Mr. McLean, any other labor partners?
There are no other labor partners.
Okay, thank you. And just as a reminder, our public comment is at the end of the meeting, but we know we have at least 15 folks, I think 15 folks signed up. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to turn to our first of, I think, 4 presentations for today's Committee of the Whole. This is the Community Spotlight, Budgeting for Student Success at Young Oak Kim Academy. We have now for well over a year begun our Committee of the Whole meetings with a school site perspective. One, to hear from our amazing LA Unified schools throughout the district, but also just to get an on-the-ground look at how what we talk about at this boardroom when it comes to the budget is actually operated on the ground. And so we're going to hear from Justin Lauer, the principal at Young Oak Kim Academy. Dr. Lauer started his LA Unified career at Madison Middle School, has been principal now for 11 years with 5.5 years at Newmark Continuation High School, where he was awarded the California Model School Award for providing credit recovery to 10 local high schools, as well as modeling a standards-based direct instruction model that has been used to improve instruction in many option schools. He returned to middle school. I know there are a few middle school educators on this dais. In 2017 at Young Oak Kim Academy with the goal to create a middle school A through G program, which I believe we're going to hear about, in order to establish a reform model that provides more structure and academic rigor for the middle grades. And he's joined today, I believe, by his AP, Thomas Chastain, who's in his 5th year as an AP. Thank you, Ms. Goldberg, for selecting a school in your board district. I think she maybe has a word or two, and then we'll hear from the school.
Just had to add that I've visited the school several times, and what I see there is truly something that should be emulated. I've always believed that there's a special place in heaven for people who work in middle schools. I was never one that was qualified to do so, so I stayed in high school. But it's a very difficult age, and the people who do it and do it well, and this school does it well, we need to be emulating, and that's why I've asked them to come today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Principal. I think we have another fan in Ms. Garcia, so let me say.
Well, we do have a fan here of Young Oak Kim, but what I wanted to celebrate is the believers and change agents. This is a very special school, so 800 seats where it's a gender academy where children choose in, and it's 2.4 acres. Built in a very challenged community on space-wise, on 6th and Vermont, but our district was able to work with transportation and housing to offer. We had to ask the state of California to change practice to allow us to bring this fabulous school to the community. So kudos to LA Unified and kudos to Young Oak Kim, who is a Belmont grad that we are very, very proud of.
Okay, now Mr. Lauer.
Thank you. And welcome, committee of the whole members, distinguished board members, Superintendent Carvalho. I should say good morning, buenos dias, bon dia. And of course, all our folks in the back, including our former superintendent, Francis Bias. I want to say thank you for your support, Monica, because you were the one who brought this school and advocated for this school to come aboard. We have had great things to work with at this school, but have taken it to a new level. And I hope the committee of the whole recognizes this today. And really, I want this to be in middle schools because it really works when it's done correctly. So what we're going to talk about today is just the financial budget processes that support this middle school A through G program, which we initiated. I will say that this happened when I was at Madison Middle School, and student after student after student would tell me, Mister, it's okay. I can fail because I'm going to go to 9th grade, and I'll start doing my work then. And I said, well, you're not going to have the skills. Mister, don't worry about it. This is what I heard over and over and over again. And I said, something's got to be done with structure in middle school. It is social promotion, essentially. And so what I did is looked at, well, first of all, let's go and talk about yoga. So we've been promoting literacy at our school. We won the Blast-Off contest. Over 10,000 books our students read. Highest reading school in middle school in the district. It supports under the A through G umbrella that we provide. Superintendent Carvalho has been there a number of times with his friend Alan there. Wonderful support, and thank you, sir, for that. High attendance. We give away thousands of medals each year at our school and support achievement in all kinds of categories. And again, this is supported under the A through G program. Everything is celebrated. Everything. Nothing gets by. Lots of clubs because we have 15 clubs because students are promoted and given culmination points to join clubs. And we'll talk about that in a second. Just a few things of the mission and vision. We are a STEAM school. Originally came about to promote engineering for our young women, and then our boys came as well. On the right side, you'll see some of the highlights. Again, we have 3 community college classes, which are full and there's a waiting list. We've been doing this for a few years, providing our kids with that opportunity to get those credits and also earn credits in high school, and our middle school A through G program, they earn credits as well. No fail rate or no fail policy at Young Oak Kim. Lately, we have about 100 parents on our waiting list, and the main reason they state is no fail policy. We provide supports and multiple intervention opportunities, and I'll show you in a second about those. Number of things on there, but I know we're limited in time. There's our demographics. We are a FABAO school, Title I school. We are not. We are a choice school, but we do not deny any students into our school. We're not a magnet where we select students. We select all students in all of our subgroups. So real quick, again, go back to the middle school. There was an issue with the social promotion. And so thinking about this and then going and becoming a principal at Newmark High School and looking back at CUMEs of middle school students, of all of our students, the wheels fell off in middle school. Middle school is where everything fell apart. Why? Because our parents struggle keeping control. I have an 11-year-old, and she's difficult. And this is where the time that the parents disengage, not because they want to, because it happens. And so that makes the school that much more important to provide a well-rounded, whole group MTSS experience for students. And we have to do all of the things for them. And so that's what the A through G program does. I'm not going to show you this, but what the research shows, and I did this in my dissertation work, is that social promotion doesn't work, retention doesn't work. What works is targeted intervention after the school day or before, or Saturdays, or winter break, or spring break, and we provide all of that because kids come in 2 grade levels below, they don't have enough time during the regular day. Yes, we coach our teachers to be better teachers and give better instruction, but if they come in that low, we have to provide them extra opportunities, and we incentivize it through the A through G program. This is kind of just a lot of the activities we do. Basically, we take the high school model of A through G, of earning credits, and we put it right into middle school. So we put all of our classes in middle school in A through G categories. And so the students have to earn credits, and if they fail, or even Ds, they have to go to interventions. And it's locally designed, mandated. Okay, and our parents love it. And you'll see on some of the SES data that the parents are so supportive of the program. And again, lots of different things here that you all know about, but that's the idea, is just every 5 weeks we look at grades. We have students examine their grades, they take responsibility for their grades, and then they choose the intervention that they need, whether it's tutoring, Saturday, or all the different academies that we offer, to get that extra work and raise their grades up. Individual culmination plan, when you get a chance to look at it, again, it's modeled after the A through G buckets that high school uses. Okay, we have all of our classes lined up, and the students practice credits, writing credits in, how many credits do they earn, and then we take E's, S's, and U's, and we assign a value to them. So teachers don't have that. Usually, if they assign an F, usually it comes with a U and a U. And it's basically the teacher deciding, oh, they work habits and cooperation, this is what happened. There's no teeth to it. We give our teachers teeth, and this has provided organic movement toward equity grading. 90% of our teachers are getting trained for equity grading, and they've moved into that category, not because I told them to, but because they realize that assignments and other things that don't have to do with mastery go into work habits and cooperation, and we give them points for that, and they have to earn points. And if they don't, they have to do community service, and we have partnerships, lots of partnerships. They join clubs, they earn points. They join sports teams, they earn points. Lots of different ways to better their situation if they earn too many U's or too many fails, and they get credits for those things. So these are the comparisons of the culmination practices and LAUSD has and YOCA's. Basically in 8th grade, that's LAUSD's culmination bulletin, states that they have to earn a certain amount of credits in 8th grade to culminate. But we leave out 6th and 7th grade. And YOCA does 6th, 7th, and 8th. We start them in 6th grade. And guess what? This year we have 32 students with 1 fail. out of almost 300. So because they're going to the interventions, and all of those 30 students are in our Saturday program, working on their grades. So again, we'll move on from that. Great evidence that shows lots of data. Of course, any initiative needs data. Our increases in SBAC, 10% this year. We went up in ELA, 7% the last time. Suspensions are 0. We haven't had any in 4 years. LCAP goal, we've met our LCAP goal 3 out of 4 times in attendance. We're one of the highest attendance middle schools in the district. The reason, the A through G program, lots of activities for students. Fighting of all of the different tier 1, 2, and 3 incidents have gone down. And I get all the time, Mister, is the D passing? Mister, what do I do if I have an F? What do I do? We are practicing this. And what happens is our high schools that our students matriculate to tell us your students are by far more prepared for high school A through G and understand the process of earning credits and understand from day one they have to make sure that they stay on track, because if they fail, they're going to repeat a class. So just some more things, and for time's sake, you can go over this, but lots of different data that backs this up. This is where the strategic plan comes in. And we thank the board and Superintendent Carvalho for coming up with this plan. It actually aligns beautifully with what we're doing. It has actually aligned our program with MTSS, which is very important and big right now with social emotional learning. And we're doing a ton to support that, and our strategic plan, which you can see the elements on the right side, all aligning to the practices of our middle school A through G program. Just some data that you can see. So again, we need data to show that this is working. The culmination rates are close to 100% this year. We want to hit 100%. Students enrolled in interventions, of close to 500 of our students are taking part in all the different interventions that we offer. The Fs and Ds and Us in all grades have plummeted down to very low numbers. Percentages of families. Oh, our families are on board with Parent Portal. We have 70% of our families on the portal, which is, I'm sorry? 78 now. 78%. It keeps going up because our families understand that we're supporting the students and giving them tools. Because before it was like, what do I do? What do I do, director? Well, now we have lots of opportunities to give them the supports. And as I said, the SBAC ELA scores are up. Suspension and discipline is way down. Here's just some slide about, again, aligning with academic excellence and engagement and collaboration. We have 78% now of our students registered. 3 years ago, it was 37%. And this is Mr. Chastain, who's my budget guru, who's going to talk a little bit about what we were here for today.
All righty. Well, it's a pleasure to be here to present to all of you, and thank you for your time and consideration. So just like the whole school MTSS plan and intervention and first instruction has to be aligned to a unified goal, we need budgets and resources to do the same. Without these resources, this program would not be possible. So we've done a lot of work with our WASC and our SPSA plans to unify and align everything, including the budget resources, to this mission and vision, and to a unified plan with the program at heart for middle school A through G. We use all those plans, and we share them. You can see that we have a great deal of parent engagement, and we're always working to increase that. And we engage all of our stakeholder groups, our committees like ELAC, SSC, LSLC, our staff through PD and faculty meetings. And this is basically a timeline of the budget process through the year. And so we're hoping to give some tips to other schools that want to implement something like this, but at the same time recognize that in order to support a program like this, we need specific resources for an A through G program in middle school. And so it all starts in the fall. We look at the SPSA evaluation. We determine if we met our goals in the previous year and what implications that has for the current year. And at the same time in the fall, right after that, we go into comprehensive needs assessment. Any new data points that we have, any new budget resources that we have to determine in the moment what changes do we want to make right now? What new needs do we have? At the same time, it's a constant cycle. So just as we just finished looking back, we're progress monitoring the present conditions, present data points, present resources and implementations. We start to develop the next year's plan, the next year's budget. In the spring, this is the hardest thing for schools, budget development. In the spring, at the same time we're progress monitoring the current year, thinking about how we did in the previous year, we have to throw together next year's plans and budgets. And so it is a very short timeline. It's like 2 weeks, basically. We get our allocation letters, and we need to come up with a budget plan. I think the key to the success that we have had at Yoka is aligning, just like we've aligned all of our MTSS and intervention and first instruction, all of our plans, aligning all of our budgets. There are like between 11 and 15 disparate, separate budgets this year. But if we can align them all and put them together in a jigsaw so that they all support the unified vision and mission of the school, they support the programs and plans for the school, and not look at them as separate buckets and pieces, that is the key to the resource and budgeting for a specific program like this, especially at a middle school that's trying something new. In the spring, 1 week after we get allocation letters, we formulate a plan with all of the budgets supporting each other and all of the budgets supporting the school's plans. We engage the stakeholders. We engage parents and staff. We have Google surveys. We have input surveys for both parents and staff. We have our annual budget consultation meeting. We're supposed to, we should, and we do that with parents. But we believe in full transparency and full distributed leadership. And so we engage our staff in that same process too. And then obviously, basically between 2 and 4 weeks after we get those allocations, we have to submit everything in our budget appointment. We feel that this whole process of being transparent, engaging everyone, distributing the decision-making so that everyone is aligned, just like all the resources are aligned, just like all the programs and plans at the school are aligned. That's the secret to the success. And we feel that you can see the strategic plan connections. These are building strong relationships, accessible information, and most importantly, data-driven decision-making. Yep. I was going to talk about the right side, but that's fine. Obviously, the secret to our success at Yoka is aligning everything, aligning all our plans, aligning all of our leadership decisions, and aligning our budgets. But we have to realize one very important thing. CENI ESSER 2 and CENI ESSER 3 are one-time budgets. Right now, we're using these budgets with the understanding that these are soft items. These are soft resources that will not carry over. They will not continue. And so our hope is that we're using this to address the current needs related to learning loss, obviously. But before the pandemic ever happened, we had achievement gaps. And so once this money goes away, what do? We're hoping that we can get more resources to duplicate this process and support this process at middle school. At the same time, we realize that may not happen. And so we are trying to leverage these resources, these one-time funds right now, to create systems so that when positions or items are no longer with us because it's one-time money, we can continue these efforts and these systems will be in place. Examples of use of CENI ESSER 2 and CENI ESSER 3 one-time money are technology for the classroom, Chromebooks, parent-centered equipment, positions like PSW, RJ teacher, additional special education teachers, additional special education assistants for full inclusion implementation at the same time. As far as the A through G program, again, it's not just a separate entity at our school. It all aligns to everything we're doing at the school. And see, these are some examples of key budgeted items that we have used at Yoka and their alignments to the strategic plan pillars and elements. Obviously, in an intervention program that's before after school or on a non-school day, tutor X time. But at the same time, teacher X time for data analysis and planning. That's part of that distributed leadership. We not only want to focus on the intervention, but we need to focus on first instruction too. Teacher auxiliary periods, funded to support period 0-7, and also to reduce class size. Classroom support aides, this is key. Special education assistants, TAs, ed aides, funded to support inclusion, but also English learner programs and access to core grade level standards. And intervention coordinator. This is funded half by the school and half by the Title I position that's the middle school, college, and career coach. And we talked a lot about the culture and climate at the school and how we have MTSS supported in many ways in first instruction, in intervention, and in student support. But at the same time, part of what makes Yoka a magic place is the parent, adult, and student culture. And so we are constantly not only intervening when a student is in need, but rewarding when we see progress in academic achievement and success. And so donations is a huge key if we're trying to explain what other principals can do to duplicate this model. Reaching out to the community resources and leveraging donations for award celebrations. We do that monthly, and this all supports our middle school A through G program at our school. In addition, we fund additional office staff. We have great parent engagement, and that's the key to this program. We want to constantly increase that parent engagement. The more office staff we have that can connect with parents and explain our programs and also answer their questions, the more successful our programs will be.
Okay. I know that we're short of time. Real quick, this is the key, intervention opportunities. We have Saturday 8-week intervention cohorts funded by TIP. Thank you very much. Winter Academy, Spring Academy. Thank you for the acceleration days. We're going to use those within these programs. Summer Academy and all after-school program, after-school tutoring with 7 different teachers in all 4 core subjects, special ed included, giving our students lots of opportunities to get better and to raise their grades. We also have a lot of curriculum on Saturdays that is prescriptive. This is the key, prescriptive intervention which focuses on the student needs. Not only grade level, but what are the students' needs? What are they? We test them. We figure out that there's so much wonderful platforms available to test students now. We test them individually, and every single student, and this is what we're about to implement, what are their weaknesses? What are their needs individually? And we help them through those. Parent data, there you go. There's Yoka on the left, high 80s and 90s in all of these categories. We expect the same this year. Our parents are extremely happy with the support that they're getting as parents in their academic journey for their students. And my time is up. But I want to thank you all. We are here for you as a resource. I really, 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 really want this program in middle schools. I think it's exceptional, the amount of progress we've made over time. And I welcome any of you to come, and many of you have, to see the calm culture that happens at the school, and the academic rigor in the classroom has increased tenfold. And I appreciate all your time today, and thank you so much, everyone.
Great. Yes, round of applause. Thank you both. I know the board, I'm sure, has some questions or comments. The superintendent might as well. So any takers to go first? Ms. Goldberg.
Yes, so you have 7 teachers who do teaching after school.
Yes.
How did you recruit them?
I get other schools calling me, hey, do you have any teachers who want to do tutoring or interventions? Our teachers also believe in this program. We've been doing it for 3 or 4 years. At first it's like, I don't know. And then they see the progress in the classroom, the change that's occurred in the classroom, and the academic rigor, and then the students' focus. And so they want to keep supporting it. And they know that the interventions are working with our students and raising grades. Every single department went from 5 to 10 weeks raised the grades up. And so our teachers are on board with it, and there's a core of them that do all of our intervention programs.
When you're looking at the results of the previous year to know what you may need to shore up, have you ever eliminated something you were doing because you said just clearly not working?
Yes. We pared down period 0 before school and made it strictly elective, fun things, because if you try to do intervention at 7:30 in the morning, a lot of the students that need the intervention are not the early risers. They're not there early. Those are the students that want those electives. So we shifted it to after school.
I asked that question because I taught a long time, and I found that it was very difficult getting rid of something that didn't work. Everybody knew it wasn't working, but we had been doing it that way for so long, and it's very difficult. So I asked that specifically because when people make decisions to get rid of something that's not working, they open up space for things that might work now instead. And I think that's why we kind of get stuck where we've been. I think the only other question I have is, what do you do about disagreements when you're doing your budget planning? The teachers want X, the parents want Y, the administration says, no, it's really Z. How do you resolve, and that's natural and normal, and I'm not discouraging it, but how do you resolve and come to conclusions when the different stakeholders may have slightly different views of how to spend money?
Thank you for that question. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of parents or staff members that disagree with our vision. However, it's important for us when we're in the budget process to take that information in and discuss. Now, this next year, we're going to have to probably eliminate some positions because of the CENI money disappearing. So then we take it to our committees, we take it to our parents and staff, and get feedback. Okay, what position is really making an impact for our students? And so that work will start right at the beginning of next semester. Tom?
I would just add one more thing. Obviously, it's a short timeline. You come up with a school plan, you present it to basically two stakeholder groups. But then I think you give it back. And so if this group, for example, wants one thing, this group wants another thing, then share that with both groups and then come to consensus on what the compromise and solution would be.
That's what I was looking for, because I think there are processes, all of us are going to disagree at some point or another when we're talking about how to spend money. I mean, I don't care where you teach or work. But the question is how you resolve that in a way that each stakeholder feels heard, even if they didn't get exactly what they wanted, and secondly, that everybody talked about everybody's ideas. So I think you're doing that, and I think those things lead to more consensus and less conflict.
I believe in shared leadership from our B&G workers, all the way from our parents, from our students. Everybody has a say, everybody has great ideas, and we take them all in.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Schmelson.
So thank you so much. A fantastic presentation, and I too am a lifelong middle school person, so I know exactly what you're talking about. What I heard all through this presentation was personalization. And we all know middle school kids, they don't know what they are. They don't know what they are. They're just feeling their oats, and we help them in middle school to become semi-adults getting ready for high school, and that's really important. Personalization is very important. So before young Oak Kim was ever even thought of, I was at Virgil Middle School, right down the street. I was there for 12 years. Virgil Middle School and beautiful Berenda were the only two schools in the whole area. We went from the Hollywood Freeway to Broadway. That's what a scarcity of middle schools there were. And it is it's just a wonderful place. So I think you know this, that middle school teachers, administrators, and staff all go directly to heaven because of the work that they do at middle school. They certainly deserve it. They certainly deserve it, yes. So I heard about the parent component, and that's really important because you know how to connect with parents, and when kids go home from school, there's more learning going on at home, too. There's studying and connection with parents. And I think it's so important that the parents are involved with your school. And I heard that through the entire presentation, parent involvement. And that, I think, is the key. Personalization, besides everything else you do that's wonderful. But personalization and parent involvement, that really, I really heard that. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia.
If only you could be a little more excited about your school. I appreciate your
Off your
joy
energy.
and your passion. Tell me about how Yoka, besides the pandemic and distance learning. Tell me about how the work with the local district and the central district has impacted your desire to build the culture and success at. So how do changes in the system impact your ability, and what do we need to know to support more schools doing something different? Mr. Schmerlson is 100% right on there were only 2. Today, there's 5 others. But, Virgil and Berenda were at 3,000 with super challenged realities. Today, that's gone, but we do still have a whole lot of people just do what we consider to be normal, as opposed to constantly working to reinvent a possibility. And so, even just a principal like yourself, you've shared with us the different jobs that you had. It wasn't strictly in one age group. But tell me about how does the culture of continuing to learn and address student need, how does it get impacted by the changes in the system?
Yes, well, Local District Central can't say enough about their support, been, champions of student wellness. And so student wellness and the MTSS umbrella really focuses on the whole child and what Mr. Schmerlson talks about personalizing for every student. We can't let any students fall through the crack. And this is what the A through G program ensures. And so under our Superintendent Bias, she was very, very adamant about making sure we do a lot of learning walks to other schools. And also, we need to rely on our colleagues because there's a lot of great stuff out there. And so we're sharing a lot of what we do with our schools, and a lot of schools are taking that. So the community of schools models worked for us really well in that we personalize the community. Koreatown is a very, very dense. It's the most densely populated area. We just put a nice new third mural in this year on 6th Street. And it's about unity and diversity and what Koreatown is. And it's a wonderfully diverse area. And so we work with our schools in making sure that we are learning from one another all the time.
Thank you. Mr. Shin?
So what you were saying about the participatory budgeting process and the distributive leadership really struck a chord with me. Because the way I got started with my involvement in the district was on my school site council and drafting North Hollywood High School's SPSA. So you showed a lot about parent engagement, and I think that reflects, especially the students' academic performance, reflects their buy-in with the school, with your mission. But I wanted to know if you thought if there was room for maybe some student engagement or talking with that stakeholder group in the budgeting process.
Oh, absolutely. We do involve them. We have an incredible leadership group. I didn't get time to show today, but please take a look on that last slide and click that link. We have the student news, and I know some of you, I've sent it to you. It's incredible. It's like a newscast, and our students' voice. The students are delivering the news. And it's not the PA, the principal giving announcements over the PA. It's the students delivering it in an engaging way that is like a real newscast. It's like what you see on the screen here. It's incredible what our leadership has done, lots of events, and they are involved in the budget process as well as peer mediation. We have over 40 students that are interested in peer mediation that we're starting up, so we're getting our students more and more and more involved, especially in deciding what positions are going to be needed. They will be involved. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. There's two questions, many questions, but we'll limit it to two. One, and I think, Mr. Chastain, that you did want to explain the other side of the slide, and time restraints being what they were, we moved on. But I was curious what a control sheet is. One of your tips was a control sheet because of carryover, and that's something the board's discussed a lot. What's the right carryover policy?
So especially when we're thinking about one-time money, carryover is super important. One-time money does not carry over. And so if you can constantly monitor the use of budgets in the moment with a control sheet, it's basically just a spreadsheet. And just every time we use a budget item, that's tracked on there. That way we ensure, probably number one, that we don't have to pay back the following year. But number two, we can plan ahead so that when we come to a point where we have to consider cutting resources, cutting positions in the next year's budgets, we can plan ahead, and we can bank the money that does carry over, those funds that do carry over, and use those to support the programs and positions that we find most important and most crucial to the program.
Another one of your tips, I think, was about ensuring budgetary transparency. And with the 11 to 15 budgets, and how is that done at your school? I mean, besides these info sessions, if a parent or community member wanted to go online and see your budget, is that possible, or how does the transparent element work?
Well, number one, in the district, we have the school directory, and any individual in the community can go to the school directory and look up all the budgets. But that's a bunch of numbers, and really a bunch of numbers, which mean absolutely nothing. And so what we try to do in those budget consultation meetings, but also in our coffee with the principal and all of our committee meetings, we are constantly referring to the budgets. Not so much is this budget item number and this specific amount, but how it all comes together to support LCAP, to support the district's goals, to support the strategic plan, and most importantly, the school goals.
And then, one thing that was in your presentation as an instructional strategy, but also as a budget item supporting your school goals, was around classroom support aids. And I'm curious just how the school thinks about this, both programmatically, because we have TAs and IAs and SPED aids and all that, but also, at least in my schools, it's something we hear schools have difficulty hiring because of the various requirements. So just curious, kind of, you can talk about how you choose those aids, how effective it is, and was hiring a challenge, and how are you getting around that?
It used to be teacher assistant was the position that was most used in classrooms in my experience, and that has become harder and harder to fill those positions. It's really hard. You have to be a full-time college student, at the same time work full-time during the school day. And that position was designed to become a future teacher. And so those are nowhere near permanent. And so what we've been doing is adjusting more to higher funded positions, which have a higher salary, so that it's more attractive. We have not been able to fill all of our teacher assistant positions. And so we've been going more to Ed Resource Aid. And funding additional special education assistance has been crucial.
When you say the higher salary positions, are those the ed support aides or the instructional aides? And got it.
Ed Resource Aid.
Ed Resource Aid.
If I could beg, we really need human relations and the processing and paperwork that it takes to get those employees processed. In the past 3 years, we all understand everything's been difficult. Many employees have been remote, but we have had candidates lined up, which is the first and hardest part. And then 2 months later, they couldn't wait to get processed, and so they went to another employment opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I think we've been hearing from all of our schools. I know it's on the superintendent, Ms. Davalos' radar, both the structural challenge of these positions, and should we think of a different classification and of 8-hour workday and benefits, and how do you, because this is a key instructional strategy, how are we thinking about those positions? But then also, once we do find a live one, who's applying? How do we not lose them in the pipeline?
How do we retain them and develop them?
And our aides are the most amazing people ever. And in many schools, aides do many different things. They're doing supervision, helping us with the after-school sports programs. They're doing lunchtime supervision. They're helping us with paperwork in the office. And so we support our aides in lots of different ways, and we see them the same. It's a good thing, but many of them are promoting to teachers, which is a good sign. We have a lot of promotion from our school because they're working in an environment where they're actually feeling they're doing something, and they're really helping kids. And so we just need to keep that pipeline going.
Yeah, well, thank you for reiterating the processing concern. Again, I know it's on the superintendent's radar. And also, I may be following up just individually to hear more about how you're utilizing those aids, because it is something, as the pandemic impressed upon all of us the need for wraparound services before school, after school, it seems like there's an opportunity for those support personnel at schools to help in the classroom, but also, like you said, with sports or extracurriculars, so seeing how the school is doing it. So, Ms. Goldberg.
More thing. I'm not sure that the audience knows that the students go to school in gender groups. So the boys go with the boys and the girls go with the girls.
Yes.
Do you think that influences how you're able to do what you do?
In the past, I would say no. I think the school was designed that way. It was supposed to be an all-girls school in the very beginning, and then we added our boys, and then we became the only co-ed single-gender school, single-sex school. I would say only recently, in the last couple of years, and I think the A through G program has really helped shape the culture, our students are now cohorting and backing each other up. We see this in classes. The boys were always the last part to really, it's tough with our middle school boys to have 30 of them in a classroom, but now we're starting to see differentiation with how they design the lessons, and the students are helping one another. I got you. We can do this. And the girls have always done that. We've thrived with our girls. The girls are leaders at our school under this model, but our boys are starting to step up and do the same thing. So now we're starting to see real results from this program. It's great.
Yeah, worth pointing out for sure. Thank you. Dr. Lauer, Mr. Chastain, thank you. Thanks to the school community. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Our second presentation is to celebrate and hear about 10 years of the Good Food Purchasing Program. I won't say too much about the program, as that's what we're going to hear about, but I do want to introduce Paula Daniels, who is the co-founder and founding chair of the Center for Good Food Purchasing. She served as Los Angeles Public Works Commissioner and was a senior advisor on food policy to Mayor Villaraigosa. She's the founder of the LA Food Policy Council. And Alexa Delwich is the executive director of the Center for Good Food Purchasing. She previously served as managing director of the LA Food Policy Council from 2011 to 2015, where she spearheaded the development, launch, and implementation of the Good Food Purchasing Program, among other things. So I'm going to hand it over to our own Manish Singh, Food Services Director for LA Unified, to kick off this celebratory presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Melvoin, for that introduction, and board members. Happy to address this august group today morning. When the Good Food Purchasing Program started, it started in Los Angeles. And LAUSD was the first district in the country to come on board. And now, so many years later, it's got a national as well as an international presence. We're very happy to say that, we were the first one on board. We made a lot of progress. The other part which I would like to say is our program is essentially the National School Lunch Program, but we incorporated all the learnings and all the guidance which came from the Good Food Procurement, which helped us to even get better. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Paula Daniels. Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, board members, committee chair. Thank you for having this presentation today. We're really excited to be here to celebrate the 10 years of the Good Food Purchasing Program in LA Unified School District, and we want to talk to you about what a difference it's made nationally as well as internationally since you took that first bold step 10 years ago. So I will be, just to give you a little order of our presentation, I'll be doing an overview of the program and how it's expanded and been recognized. Alexa Delwich, my co-founder of the Center for Good Food Purchasing, will talk specifically about LAUSD's achievements, and then we have representatives from the American Heart Association, the Teamsters, and from Occidental College to speak to different aspects of the program as well. So let me see if I figured out how to use this. I didn't. The next slide, how do I do it? Maybe I turn it around. There we go. Okay. So first, we thought it would be helpful to see a movie. A picture tells 1,000, picture's worth 1,000 words, a movie's worth more. So we have a very short video that Kevin's going to help us tee up that was done in 2016. It was done a few years ago, but even then, it showed about the benefits of the program. Here we go. We'll rotate.
My name is Smilan Bernal. I'm a senior at Thomas Jefferson High School. In my community, the only place I can get healthy food is in school.
The Good Food Purchasing Policy was developed by the LA Food Policy Council. It's the most comprehensive institutional food purchasing policy in the country because it covers 5 value categories: local economies, environmental sustainability, valued workforce, animal welfare, and nutrition.
When you buy food, you're basically voting with your food dollars for the kind of food system that you want. What if major institutions started doing that with their millions of food dollars and started signaling to the marketplace what kind of food system they want?
LAUSD really ran with it and are making an impact in the way that businesses are producing food.
You actually feel like there's someone here, like just a worker getting the paycheck. I deliver great food, fresh food to kids that don't get that at home. They don't have access to that at home.
School, it's my fancy restaurant where I can get healthy food, where it is local, it is fresh, everyone is treated fairly, and everyone's happy.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. That was from a few years ago, and the program has even grown more since. Sorry, it sort of brings tears to my eyes when I hear that student from Thomas Jefferson High School. So that's why we do it, but also for their future on the planet and what the food system means in many ways. So the program that you all right, so I'm still not doing this right. Yeah, sorry. there we go. So the program itself uses the power of procurement, as that student mentioned, and as Joanne Lowe of the Food Chain Workers Alliance mentioned. So it uses your purchasing power to make a difference in the food system, because you've got a significant amount. And as you saw, we work on the 5 key values that were pointed out in the video, but we also work on equity, transparency, and accountability. So we collect data, and then we reflect it back so you can make changes, as LAUSD has done, to make a difference. This is the highlight of how this started. We started working on this program, actually. The Food Policy Council opened its doors in 2011, but we actually started researching this in 2010. It was a 2-year process involving many stakeholders, a lot of due diligence, a lot of vetting, a lot of peer review to make sure that what we were doing made sense, and we had stakeholders from across the food supply chain, businesses as well as a number of other stakeholders and advocacy groups. So when we unveiled it, it was adopted in the city of LA, and then 2 weeks later you adopted it, and that is the place that made a huge difference. As Alexa said in the movie, when LAUSD became involved, you immediately made a difference. You went from 10% local sourcing of produce to an average of 60%. You redirected $12 million into the local food economy and made other changes, all of which are continuing to grow, which you'll hear about in a second. So we formed the Center for Good Food Purchasing to take it nationally, because your example made a national difference. It made ripples throughout the country, and there was demand for the program. So we formed the Center for Good Food Purchasing, and that got national as well as international attention. In 2018, Alexa and I flew to Rome to meet with at the UN, at the Food and Agriculture Organization, and receive recognition from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Future Council, and IFOAM Organics International for this program and for the work that you set us on a path toward achieving. So we're now, we're now around the country. We're in 24, actually 25 cities around the country, even in my home state of Hawaii. Thank you for acknowledging Indigenous people this month. I'm part Hawaiian. Really appreciate the recognition of this traditional wisdom. But also, we're around the country. Everybody is following your example in 63 institutions, over 25 of which are school districts. And we're influencing over $1 billion in food. And we just called out some. The map is very macro, so some of the images on the map are from Fresno, San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and New York, all of which have their school districts enrolled, among many others, Minneapolis, Cincinnati, et cetera. Just to continue to mention some of the awards, I mentioned the one at the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. We've been featured quite a lot in many publications, mainstream publications, as well as in academic studies and publications. The True Cost Accounting for Food book included a chapter on LAUSD's example, and in Frontiers, a peer-reviewed journal as well, there's been a number of publications pointing this out about the success here. And our work has attracted, and we work with a number of national partners. We work very closely with these organizations and others that you see on the screen, including the Urban School Food Alliance, which is an official partner of our program. Why are they participating in this? Because we meet a number of all of their key national as well as global objectives. We, participating in our program helps meet UN Sustainable Development Goals. It also meets the goals of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. That is a pact that was started in 2014 after you first became involved in this program, but it's a pact that's signed, it's an international agreement among mayors across the world. There are now 250 mayors of global cities that have signed on to this pact, and one of the things they commit to is using purchasing power in their regions to make the difference that you all are making. New York City actually recently received an award from the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact for its participation in the Good Food Purchasing Program. So I will now turn it over to my colleague Alexa Delwich, who will talk about LAUSD's example specifically. Alexa, here you go. You have to.
See how this goes. Good morning, board members. Thank you, Paula, and thank you all for your time. So Food Services shared with us earlier this year how they plan to help the district approach and achieve the framework outlined in your very comprehensive strategic plan. And each of the strategic plan pillars aligns closely with the district's commitment to values-based procurement. And food procurement and food service operations can really serve as a linchpin in successful implementation of the plan. We're going to transition now to a brief walkthrough of the district's performance in your most recent Good Food Purchasing Assessment from school year 2019 to 2020, a year unlike any other. Despite this, LAUSD hit performance targets in 4 out of 5 value categories: local economies, valued workforce, animal welfare, and nutrition. The district even achieved targets around reducing your carbon and water footprint in the environmental sustainability category, and you now just need to implement a food waste audit and plan in order to hit targets in all 5 value categories. This is an extraordinary achievement. Absolutely. It's one that few districts in the country have achieved, and certainly you are the first district to hit these targets operating at LAUSD scale. And this is a testament to the hard-working, committed food services team. As the second largest school district in the nation, your participation in the Good Food Purchasing Program is a big deal. When you make a change, it has extraordinary ripple effects all along the supply chain. And here are a few highlights. In school year 2019 to 2020, about $20 million of the district's food dollars were invested in the local food economy, or about 20% of your annual budget, food budget. This investment in the local food economy supports over 150 local jobs, equivalent to annual local wages of just over $7.5 million. In 2014, your board adopted a resolution committing the district to purchasing 100% of chicken produced without routine antibiotics. And in 2019-2020, the district made good on this commitment with 100% of chicken purchases produced without routine antibiotics. We witnessed wages increase by 40% and benefits improve for 320 warehouse workers and truck drivers along the district's supply chain. And as of school year 2019-2020, the district reduced its purchase of animal proteins by 15% per meal served, and that's equivalent to taking over 1,100 cars off the road each year. Purchases of processed meats decreased by 21%, and that reduces the risk of chronic disease among your students. We've highlighted some of the positive impacts that the district has had, and we're even more excited about what's to come. A few key priorities that Food Services has identified that are on the horizon include: Food Services is working on several interrelated initiatives to create opportunity for even bigger shifts in values-based procurement efforts. Minimizing food waste is a top priority. Food Services will pilot a food waste reduction program at 6 schools this year, and they will conduct in-house food waste audits and use the World Wildlife Fund's food waste program resources to identify successful strategies to scale up the efforts. Efforts to electrify existing kitchen facilities and improve cafeteria infrastructure will create more opportunity for scratch cooking, which is a known driver for procurement of more whole and minimally processed foods. Food Services also incorporating fruit and vegetable bars at all elementary schools. And looking forward to the next 10 years, I was reflecting back on LAUSD's school food leadership from the last 2 decades that established the district as a national leader. The efforts of the Healthy School Food Coalition, along with school board members and staff leadership, were pivotal. Student, parent, and community engagement were at the heart of these initiatives, and the dedicated staff time to this type of engagement will ensure that these relationships remain strong and feedback loops continue. One important way to nurture these relationships and feedback loops is through opportunities like this, where the district can publicly share their progress and invite community and student members to both celebrate the district's achievements and include recommendations for future priorities. As Paula mentioned earlier, the impact of LAUSD's implementation of the Good Food Purchasing Program extends well beyond the city's boundaries. By sharing your successes and your challenges, LAUSD is a unique and powerful proof point for values-based procurement at scale. The pandemic made visible what is often invisible, and it's the critical role that you play nourishing students and families every day. Food Service Division makes magic on a daily basis, and this is on a shoestring budget. School districts need more money to purchase the high-quality food that every child deserves. That's why we help to advocate for the creation of a $100 million incentive fund with the state of California for all school districts across the state. And we look forward to working in partnership with LA Unified to demonstrate how this infusion of funding can lead to transformative food system impacts and lead the way in showing how public food dollars can serve the public good. Thank you, board members, for your time and leadership, and I will now turn the presentation over to Ana Alicia Carr at the American Heart Association. She'll be followed by Sean Martinez with the Teamsters, who's joining us by Zoom, followed by Sharon Check at Occidental College, and we'll conclude with Manish. Thank you.
Good morning, board members. I do want to also start by acknowledging Christine Tran, who's the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Food Policy Council, who was planning to be here today but unfortunately wasn't able to make it, so she sends her regards. Good morning. My name is Ana Alicia Carr, Community Advocacy Director with the American Heart Association, and also the chair of the LA Food Policy Council's Good Food Purchasing Policy Working Group. Quite a long spiel there. It is my pleasure to be here this morning recognizing and congratulating LA Unified on the 10th anniversary of its adoption of GFPP. With a mission centered on creating a world of longer, healthier lives, the American Heart Association is committed to advancing equitable access to nutritious foods that promote cardiovascular health. As advocates for robust nutrition guidelines, we recognize the important role school food plays in ensuring children have the healthiest options possible. For many families, healthy meals are difficult or even impossible to consume because of issues like food insecurity and intentional and targeted marketing of junk foods aimed at Black and Latino children. School meals offer an opportunity to ensure students receive nutritious foods that are conducive to their learning and health outcomes. We applaud an institution as large and far-reaching as LAUSD for prioritizing the health and well-being of students as well as the broader food system. So we look forward to your continued collaboration and leadership. Thank you very much. And I think next is going to be Sean Martinez, who's going to be joining us virtually.
Sean, I see that you're online with us, and I've asked you to promote to a panelist, as well as requested that you unmute yourself so you can go ahead and talk. Press *6 to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
We sure can. Go ahead. Thank you so much.
Okay. Apologies. I had a personal issue this morning, and actually trying to pull over to the side of the road so that I can speak. I'll keep my comments brief. I'm with the Teamsters Union, and was a part of an effort by originally truck drivers for Gold Star Foods a couple years after LAUSD passed the Good Food Purchasing Program as policy. And I just wanted to share how important GFPP was to that organizing effort, as folks who are aware of kind of the process to form a union in the private sector in this country. It's a grueling process, and a lot of fear that workers have for, basically demanding better from their employer. And the Good Food Purchasing Program was a tool that we utilized in our organizing efforts to explain to workers, and eventually, a framework that allowed us to start a conversation with the employer directly, but with the workers especially, us being able to say, look, your biggest customer, which is LAUSD, actually has a policy in place where valued workforce, your rights as workers is valued, and it is important, and it's taken into consideration in the decisions that the district makes when it goes to award contracts for providing food. And that was a really big kind of stabilizer in our organizing efforts. And so I just wanted to highlight that point. And I think that we obviously need to do more of this. We need to educate more workers and LAUSDs and other district supply chains about this policy, because I think it gives them that extra security blanket that often they'll need to take that step to organize for better. And so just some of the transformation that happened at Gold Star, when we started helping those workers organize, there were drivers that were making as little as $13 an hour. And when we ratified our first contract, eventually after an election, a union election, and after reaching out directly to the company to kind of bypass some legal maneuvering, when we got to that first contract, we had grown men crying in that room because of the transformation that it was going to provide for their families, up to something that was more close to a living wage, and having the stability and the rights that a union contract brings. And then eventually we were able to also get the warehouse organized at that company, and that's created a stability for the employer and also for the employees on the inside, where we've negotiated some standards for the warehouse workers, made the place much more efficient, and also given workers an ability to earn more money as they become more proficient at the job. So the policy, I think, is, we've accomplished a great deal. I think there's a ton more to accomplish. And, I just wanted to get on today to share our story about how transformational this policy was in the lives of now what are about 400 Teamster members. So thank you for the time.
Good morning, board members. As Alexa said, my name is Sharon Check, and I am with the Urban and Environmental Policy Institute at Occidental College, or UEPI. And UEPI has been a leader in the farm to school movement for over 20 years, advancing programming at local LAUSD schools, incubating the National Farm to School Network, and co-chairing the Los Angeles Food Policy Council's Farm to School and Garden Working Group. Farm to school programs bring healthy, sustainable foods from local farms to cafeterias, helping children understand where their food comes from and the importance of supporting their local communities, all while encouraging students to make healthy food choices a part of their everyday lives. We support the Good Food Purchasing Program as an integral component of farm to school and the farm to school ecosystem here in California, as it prioritizes procurement from local farmers, which is a core pillar of the farm to school model. In line with farm to school values, the Good Food Purchasing Program also offers a powerful framework for transforming the school food supply chain into a value chain that uplifts and prioritizes the environment, the people who grow, deliver, and make our food, local farmers and food economies, humane treatment of animals, and the nutrition of our students.
With 10 years of commitment to the Good Food Purchasing Program, LAUSD is leading the country in innovating new approaches to bringing healthy, better quality, and more sustainable food to students. And UEPI, along with our wide network of farm-to-school partners, look forward to LAUSD's continued innovation in meeting and then expanding the Good Food Purchasing Program goals. Thank you.
So in short, thank you. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you to Manish.
So that was our presentation about what we've done and what we've achieved with Paula's team. We are committed, as you saw some of the initiatives which are in the works. One of them is having fruit and vegetable bars at all elementary schools by the end of the school year. We're looking to get more equipment into our kitchens so that we can actually cook from scratch. That's going to be a little bit of a process because when you want to make changes in the kitchen, it requires adjustment, needs help from M&O, needs help from facilities. But we are committed to that, and we will continue this path where we are providing wholesome food to our students, which we can be very proud of, and continue to spearhead this movement whereby school food can be something which people can say, hey, it's wonderful. And as part of that, we're also looking, hopefully, into a central kitchen at some point of time where we can manufacture and cook our own food. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Yeah, and thank you. The point of this presentation was celebratory, and we do have a certificate that I'll read in a few. I think the board might have some questions and comments, but it's really exciting. And I want to thank our partners. I appreciated how you had labor and our nutritional partners and our academic university partners. How we spend our money matters, and the impact we can have as the second largest district in the country, not only on the nutritional benefits for our students, but the environment, the labor market is really incredible how we can move the market. And I know that, as we have our facilities team here and representatives from the superintendent's team, there are other areas that we can do this in, and the food purchasing program and policy is a great example. I also just want to give a big thanks to Mr. Singh and your team in the district, because there are a lot of ways this district has historically responded to critical friends and feedback. And what I've seen is just this incredibly collaborative evolution, and not saying, oh no, we only get X dollars from the federal government for our meals, or no, it's so hard, but really, yes, we'll do better, and we're going to get those bars, and we're going to look at that central kitchen, and we're going to do that food waste audit. And so just the spirit in which all this feedback has been received has been really exciting from I think the board's vantage point, to say that this is an area where we know we can do better. You're helping us get there, but I think you're pushing against an open door when it comes to Mr. Singh and the district. So really exciting stuff. I know my colleagues want to chime in with some questions, comments, and then we do have a certificate. We're a few members short, so we'll probably maybe do a picture with you all and then take it back to get those signatures. But we do want to celebrate in a few minutes. So Mr. Schmerelson, and we'll start with you.
Yes, I think I speak to Mr. Singh more than anyone else in senior management except Mr. Hovatter. I think you win as far as my communicating with you constantly by email and telephone, and I appreciate the help. So I do have a bunch of questions for the slides, but I wanted to talk about your presentation in the beginning. It was really, really good. So I want you to know that the cafeteria is a major stop for me when I visit the schools. A major stop for me when I visit the schools. You know, the ladies and gentlemen there don't know how important they are in the nutritional lives of our students. And I tell them, you don't realize how important you are. You're serving nutritious meals to the kids. Many of our families are working 2 and 3 jobs. They get home late, and the kids get home from school. What do? They start filling their face with chips and sodas and things and don't eat healthy. But the schools do provide a very healthy meal. Once in a while, I will get a parent who tells me these stories about the cafeteria, which I know are not true, and I invite them. I said, I'll meet with you at our cafeteria anytime you want. Just tell me the day, and we'll come and see what the cafeteria offers and what it looks like as a surprise to the cafeteria. They won't know ahead of time. No one has ever taken me up on my offer. So I don't know why, but anyway, I'm very proud of our cafeteria. One of the things you mentioned was food waste. Now, I'm not sure if this means preparing less items so that there's not throwaway things. I don't know, it's very hard to calculate. You never know, except I know what the kids like. I know what things they like, and I know which to make more or less of if I were the manager. But it's very hard to share leftover food with agencies. It's almost like it's impossible. I mean, there are so many rules and regulations about sharing, keeping the temperature at a certain level. The district's afraid that people are going to sue them if someone gets sick from the food. So I would love to have a plan where we actually can share leftover food kept at a right temperature with maybe homeless shelters and things like that. But it's so hard to do, and I don't know how we can fix that problem. I've been doing this for now 7 years, and I still can't. We've had councils and meetings, and it just doesn't work. It's so complicated. So that's something to think about. And I'll do my questions after the rest, okay? Thank you, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Schmelson. Ms. Goldberg.
Yes, thank you. I too want to look at waste because I go sometimes to breakfast in the classroom and I see the kids eat one thing and nothing else. One of my elementary school student councils said, can we have breakfast in the classroom served family style? That is to say, put the stuff out there and let me pick what I want so that I don't throw so much away. And I said, well, when I get a chance, I'll ask the question. So I got a chance, now I'm asking the question.
That's a great question, something which we have talked to USDA for the longest time. There's some regulations. From the regulatory perspective, it is the kids need to have a full meal. So that is minimum, a whole cup of fruit, and then an entree, which could be, more grain. And you see sometimes we have parents saying, need more protein. But the requirement, as per the regulation, is more grain. But it's whole grain. So having said that, we have pointed out to USDA and to the legislators that, listen, a whole cup of fruit is one big apple or equivalent to 2 bananas. You want to give it to a small little kid or even a grown-up kid. I can't eat 2 bananas. That's too much food. So when you have some of these regulations, you help promote food waste, which is something which we are trying to avoid. We hope that as this is being considered, that we will come to good outcomes, but we're still waiting to see what the final is. On our perspective, so far as goes breakfast in the classroom, there is the program which says, you can save it for later because it's not a perishable thing. A fruit can be kept and you can eat it later. Or secondly, there's a sharing table, so you put it back there so it goes back to the cafeteria and we can reuse it. So anything which has not been opened up or it's a full fruit, it can go back and it can be used again.
I think the youngsters that were speaking with me didn't know that, and so they thought it was all going to be thrown away. But I thought it was very interesting that their student council wanted to talk to me about that, because I think kids do notice when there's waste because food is so expensive and their parents have such difficulty making sure that they can provide fresh fruits and vegetables. So these children were very concerned that this was all going to be thrown away and that there was going to be a lot of waste.
And we agree with that totally. I just want to add one more thing, that there is an element which is called offer versus serve. So we provide a variety of things, but they don't have to take everything. So we actually now have got posters up in the classrooms, as well as when they come through the lines during lunch. But putting up a poster, how many people notice? So we've been actively telling our staff that they need to educate them on that so that people know that they don't have to take everything. They take what is required. That automatically helps to minimize waste. So
I think Mr. Salcido wants to chime in quickly. Yeah.
We actually did somewhat of a little study on this over the summer on just waste production through our food program. We spend about $100,000 a week, about 6 tons, either removing waste, food waste from school sites. And what we have to look at is first, what is behavior driving in terms of student desire, in terms of food. So really kind of revisiting menus, and I think the team's done an amazing job this year to really kind of pinpoint and get feedback from students on what are students demanding, because that allows you to then source food in a way that allows us to reduce waste. But there are other mechanisms for actually utilizing waste in a very different way. So if you look at food recovery hierarchies, you look at source reduction, you look at how you can donate to others, you look at actually relationships from when we talk about farm to table, how do we actually take some of that waste back to the farms for animal feed? And then think about composting and some of the other kind of eco-sustainable practices that we should be employing as a district. And so it's very tied into some of the things that we're talking in facilities, our gardens. So there's opportunities that even though we may have experienced higher waste, it can be repurposed for other uses.
Well, if it's repurposed, I don't call it waste.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point.
Yep.
The point. When I was first on the board in the 80s, we had an organized system with about 5 large social service agencies for them to come to certain named schools, because not everybody had enough for them to even bother stopping. And they actually had a little contract that they would come at a certain time in the afternoon, pick it up with a certain kinds of trucks, and then we would give it to them. And I think that worked better than trying to do it universally. We went to particular agencies and said, here's a dozen schools not too far from you. Are you interested? A lot of them said no, but a lot of them said yes. So maybe that's an approach we could go back to. I always think when I talk about nutrition about Julie Kornstein, because the entire 8 years I was here, she was redoing the food and nutrition of school lunches. I mean that seriously, and she did it long after I left the board. But I think it's important to note that this board has really always had some advocates, and sometimes all of us as advocates, for the idea that nutrition's not an unimportant issue for our kids. I do want to say, though, when we were talking about buying electric buses, we were talking about something like this. We already know how to do this. We were talking about making certain changes that would get us not just the buses, but better working conditions for the people who build them, and better choices about how that stuff, where we would buy them and so forth. So when I saw this, I thought, we already know how to do this.
It's funny because I actually mentioned that to Board Member Malvoin, and my notes was, this is very much a framework for how we approach some of the facilities challenges, transportation, some of the other kind of business practices that, from a procurement standpoint, that we employ as a district. And so we're already kind of heading down that path, but here's a model where we see success. And
I think I would like to make sure that we share the accomplishments and opportunities report with that large group of people who keep talking to us about climate change and so forth, because they may not know, I didn't really know that we had this much environmental sustainability in this program. So I just hope that we can share it with them as well. I did notice that, and there's sort of no page numbers, but the environmental sustainability actually dropped between 1718 and 1920. But not the water safe and the carbon safe. Do we know why that actually dropped, or was it just one of those things that happens in those 2 years?
Want to talk about it? Or I can talk about it. So one of the things is that on the sustainability part, of course, one is reduction in waste. The second part is environmental sustainability is to encourage and have more organic food, which gets to be a little more expensive.
Of course.
But I just want to say also that come November 17th, we are introducing NAE, that's no antibiotic ever turkey, in our schools. So that is coming up. We're constantly looking at ways of doing it. Part of the waste reduction is the legislation which causes more waste to happen. But the other part is, as Mr. Salcido talked about, is the opportunities that we could recycle the food. We do have a donation program, but a bit of it went into hiatus because of the last 2 years.
Of course.
But I think we've already got some people who've approached us to do it and go through the process. But some of those things which I talked about, the offer versus serve, which is for breakfast, lunch, as well as supper, whereby students take what they want. Unfortunately, if they don't take the whole meal, which is called a reimbursable meal, we have to say you need to take this. And when kids are kids, then they do their kid thing. Now it is also saying you can do alternatives and bring that into the mainstream so that while they're very conscious about food waste, they also understand that they play a part in it.
Board Member Goldberg, if I can jump in, and thank you for asking that question. We have no shortage of praise, as you know, for the work that they're doing, and they do have a challenge with respect to having a minimal budget, which is why we advocated for the $100 million that my colleague Alexa mentioned. It is in the California budget now to be available and will be dispersed next year for school districts who apply to be able to purchase more environmentally sustainable food, among other attributes. It also includes local, it also includes fair labor and other attributes. They built our value categories into the criteria for that $100 million budget. But the very reason we advocated for it, because we could see that it was a challenge to stay within budget and also buy more from these suppliers that provide more environmentally sustainable food. So looking at that, we want to share with you that we do participate in advocating, and I'll be in DC in 2 weeks meeting with the USDA with folks at the school lunch program to advocate for the types of things that Manish has mentioned. The other thing is food waste. So I think once the school district participates in the food waste audit, which they are planning, we'll be able to figure out how to approach that as well. And bulk dispensing, including for milk, can make a huge difference in that area. So we expect the scores will go up soon, and we'll look forward to reporting on that in another year or so.
A couple more questions, if I may. On a page, I don't have a page number, but it's 6 of some report. It talks about BIPOC, women-owned and small family owned investment change, and it went from 0 to 0. So how do we change that?
So as part of our contracts, we have different partners, and we have different categories. So for each category, we have up till 2 or 3 partners for that. Part of the reason why you see the 0 to 0 is because we didn't get all the input in terms of the small farmers and the small groups that they were buying from. So now we have specifically focused on that.
So it isn't 0,
Yes.
It's just we didn't have the data.
Yes.
Excellent.
So we've specifically said to them, we need this information for the minority groups because that is important to us. That's something which we are committed to supporting. And so we need it. We know that you're doing it, but we need the data to show it also.
2 more things. I, too, visit all my cafeterias. And the most important thing I can say about all of them, besides the incredible hardworking people that are using them, is that they have no air conditioning. And I was in one room that had 1 door, no windows, on a day that was about 80 degrees, and it felt like 150 degrees in that room. And I just simply say that that's not okay. We have to do something about that because it isn't going to get cooler. It's going to get hotter in Los Angeles. And I'm aghast at the conditions that many of our cafeteria workers have to work in. And then I go to another school, and it has windows and doors and fans, and while it was hot, it was certainly bearable. So I think that's something I really hope we can spend some serious time figuring out, because nobody should have to work under those kinds of conditions. I don't care where they are. Yet day after day after day in those heat waves, they were really suffering. And I don't mean a little bit, a lot. So the other thing that I'm a little worried about is storage space at many of my schools, which makes some of their choices limited. So I hope we can find more ways to provide storage space, particularly at elementaries, because then they have more choices as to how they can deviate amongst the various choices that the kids get, and it really limits it in some places. Finally, I just want to say, though, that I agree with you that the folks in our cafeterias are unbelievable what they get done with such limited spaces. I'm a little concerned that every school gets basically the same menu, because I know, for example, at Salvin, they can't use salads. The kids are unable to eat them, and yet they get salads every day. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to adjust a little bit that everybody gets pretty much the same menu. to meet the specific needs of specific schools, because I know that will also eliminate waste. They feel bad. They're throwing that salad away almost every day. But they don't have any choice because that's what they get. Finally, I have one question. I was at a school where they were getting ready for lunch, and they opened a box of Bartlett pears, and they were all bad. What do they do when that happens? Do they have a process? Do they know what to do when that happens?
They do. So when we get produce or any product which might not be what it should be.
Well, it's just overripe. They were just overripe.
Right. So we get these deliveries directly from from the farms through Gold Star. So it doesn't go through our central warehouse. It goes straight to the schools. At that point of time, they put it aside. We ask for credit for it. Of course, if the frequency is high, once in a while, those things do happen. I'm not going to say it never happens. But we have a process for it. We get credit for it. And immediately they also come and they remove it.
That's good, because I know that they were aghast because it was the fruit that was going to be on the tray. And now they had no fruit on that tray because the kids would not eat with the brown spots on a pear. They're just not going to take one of those. I'm sorry. I know adults that won't. I find it okay, but a lot of adults won't either. Kids definitely won't. So, but there is a process for that.
There is.
Okay, thank you. I have to just say over and over again, I think that what is happening in food services is really outstanding, is leading the way, makes it much more possible for kids to feel that they've had a good, wholesome meal. The difference between processed turkey and unprocessed turkey in a sandwich is like they're two different sandwiches. They're not the same sandwich, and they're certainly not the same nutritional values. So I appreciate what you're all trying to do.
Thank you. Ms. Goldberg, I'd just like to address the air conditioning piece because that has been a hot topic. We actually have funds.
Pun intended, Munish.
We have funds allocated for that, and we're working closely with facilities and MNO to action it so that every school, every cafeteria does have a cooling system. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be a central cooling system because, the costs are prohibitive, but they will have a cooling system which makes it bearable. That is definitely in the works. Yes.
Thank you all, and we'll continue going around in a minute. Just a few comments. One, there's a reason we did this presentation right before the legislative update, because one of our legislative advocacy items that Ms. Alvarez will be talking about is federal advocacy around flexibility in the school nutrition program, addressing some of the food waste, environmental sustainability stuff. Two, I did have you in mind, Jackie, when I was talking about the larger implications, thinking of the bus program, so thank you for bringing that up. And also for acknowledging Julie Kornstein. I know Marlene Cantor, also big on the nutrition, and my direct predecessor, Steve Zimmer, was a real champion of this program. And so as we continue this legacy, I just want to acknowledge his commitment to this, and it's something that this board, and Jackie's right, it seems timeless in terms of this board's commitment to it. So thanks to those predecessors. And I also want to note, too, before going to Mr. Shin and then Ms. Garcia, and circling back to Mr. Schmelson, there is in the public materials a couple of appendices for people who are interested in going beyond just the slide of how the district's doing. There's a lot of great information there. So if anyone is interested in seeing more about specific school-specific purchases or how the district did on those matrices, check out the appendix. Mr. Shin.
Thank you. I know that most of the board members have raised every aspect of food waste, so I just wanted to ask a couple more questions, very brief questions. The first was, I think Ms. Goldberg, you were referencing the food donation program where organizations can work with schools to pick up the food. And so I'm looking at the list of organizations right now, and then there's also a toolkit, like a 6-page sheet that just explains how a nonprofit organization can get in touch with the district and contact the school. And so it says that when somebody wants to collect food from the district, it'll go through your division first, then it'll go through risk management, and then OGR. And on it, there's a little note on the side that says, please allow for 2 weeks for review and notification. And so since you mentioned that there were some organizations reaching out to you after the pandemic, I was wondering if you could just do an informal look at that and see if it actually does take 2 weeks for those organizations to get in touch with the school district. And then the second thing was, I'm on the website right now for the OEHS Waste Management Unit, so I know it doesn't fall under you. But here it says that tentatively by December of this year, there are going to be specialized rubbish disposal containers to toss all food scraps. Are those already at school sites?
My understanding is that those have been deployed. It is also part of the new state requirements. So that's something that's been implemented for quite some time.
With regard to the donation policy, I would say based on pre-pandemic numbers, normally once somebody completed a form and submitted it, within about a month we would get done. So 2 weeks might be a little quick, but within 4 weeks we've been able to do it, yes.
And when you reach out to these organizations, what's the most common reason you get that they say we can't do it or we won't be able to pick up the food?
You know, one of the things sometimes some people say, too many stops for us to collect from. You know, but as Ms. Goldberg suggested, you know, if you can get a group of schools which are in close proximity, say maybe within a 5-mile radius, that could possibly help with that. So those are some of the criteria. Now, the other part of it is, one of our requirements is that they have to be a 501c, because it's not something that we're just giving away. It has to be for a purpose and, you know, ultimately to benefit the community.
And so for giving away the food, it says here in the bulletin that the food needs to be picked up no later than 30 minutes after the lunch period. So I'm in high school, and a lot of the juniors and seniors drive. I know a lot of them who volunteer at food banks, especially like faith-based organizations and things after school. So why is it that it needs to be 30 minutes after lunch? Why can't, say, a student or a teacher drive the food over after school?
Well, I mean, one of the things, again, was, you know, temperature control. We don't want to donate something which could potentially be hazardous. So it is to make sure that everything is in the time and the temperature zone. I would say that, you know, we normally have allowed them to pick it up like, say, about 3 o'clock. By normally, most schools' lunch is over by 1. Some exceptions, 1:30. So it gives a little more, but more than that, you know, even as we talked about storage space, we have very limited storage space in many schools. So for them to be able to accommodate that and keep that while they're receiving additional deliveries, that also becomes a concern. And Ms. Goldberg, I just want to also share with you that a lot of schools which wanted additional freezers as well as refrigerator, we've already got those. So, yes.
Great, thank you. Ms. Garcia.
The work is never finished, but I wanted just to say I'm glad Mr. Salcedo said this is a model, working with the having a 10-year checkpoint, working with a partner and leading the way is something LA Unified must do. So I love the economic justice that is tied to the food justice, that really does tie into the academic justice, educational justice, wellness world. So kudos to all of you. I want to encourage you to continue to tell the story. School districts in particular here in Los Angeles, we have to continue to bring partners together so that every operations is best in class. And certainly there's more to do for the next 10 years, but we have been a bright light despite a lot of challenges. And so thank you for bringing your leadership, your love, and your service to our students. It does make a difference, not just so we could feel like it's good public work, bridging that human need and the academic need, but really so we can model families of low-income resources, first-generation college goers, the poor really are leading in so many ways just out of sheer necessity. So thank you, and I look forward to more improvements and celebrations. Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Schmelzen, did you have you know, we're running a little behind schedule. I think Manish hears from me a good amount. So, but I'll defer to you for some questions, and then we'll present the certificate.
Thank you. So on slide 11, it says 40% wage increase for 320 workers in the supply chain. Are these workers also in our food services division?
But they do support Food Services Division. So these are workers from Gold Star Foods, and these are the truckers you had them talk about at Teamsters. So they support our program.
But not necessarily Food Service Division workers,
So,
workers
food
that
service-
support them.
Yes,
Okay, okay,
yes.
got it. Slide 11, where do we get our chicken?
So right now, we get our chicken from Tyson through Gold Star. We have reached out to Foster Farms because they are the California company, and we are actively asking them to go for our next bid. Other options is Mary's Chicken, which is totally organic, very expensive, but we are looking to do the best of what we can.
Okay, and going back to Jackie's question, beside slide 12, it says electrify existing kitchen facilities and improve their cafeteria infrastructure across the district. So besides ovens and refrigerators, and I know you're doing that because I see them, what kind of upgrades are we looking at? Are we only using bond funds to pay for this, or do we have other grants to pay for this?
So we got some state funding. This last year, we got $15 million from the state for kitchen infrastructure. We're expecting to get some more funds probably January, February as part of the state's allocation or allotment of funds. With that, one of the things which we are looking to do is to get combi ovens into schools because they have a lot more flexibility. A lot of other school districts which we talked to have also been very strong advocates of having combination ovens because they have the capacity to not only bake food, but steam cook it, grill it. You can even brown turkey in it. So I was like, that is what really we want to do. Our goal is to get them out at all our secondary schools, and which will enable us to even do scratch cooking of some meats as we move forward. But as we do it, you know, when you're installing equipment, you've got to make all these changes, DSCR requirements, all that. So we've already been talking to facilities as well as to MNO about those changes so that we can incorporate them in. And this will be over a period of time because each school will require its own adjustments. But that is really how we look to go forward. Also, we're talking about food trucks in the near future.
Yeah. Before I was a board member, $15 million, wow. And when I see what things cost, it's really not that much money. It's great to have, I'm not complaining, but $15 million does not really do the trick for just a handful of schools. Last question. Looking ahead, slide 13, dedicate staff time for community engagement. So what kind of community engagement are we talking about?
So a couple of things which we're doing. Number one is we're doing food tastings at our schools. So we're inviting parents, we're inviting administrators, students to come and taste the food because that's the easiest way of dispelling whatever notions you have about it. You know, it's terrible, it's horrible, it's county food, and I don't know what county food means. Come and taste it, come and see it. And we've seen time and time again, when people come and do it, they're like, okay, this is good food. You know, and we've already shared with them that the same sources that you buy from your grocery store is where we procure our food from. So having said that, that's one of the things. We are having vendor food fairs, actually on the 8th, 9th, and 10th at 3 schools, where we'll be inviting students to come and taste and decide what is happening. In addition to that, we're working with Antonio Plasencia, to have ongoing meetings with parent groups so that we can share our side of the story. They can tell us what they want. Because at the end of the day, it is to provide food which the kids will eat. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I have some schools with farms on the grounds, and those are the happiest animals after lunch. So that's where our leftovers go to. Like at North Hollywood High School, yeah, they love it. They just love it. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Singh.
I last taught right outside that farm and had all the wonderful odors coming into my classroom.
Ms. Goldberg, do you have a final question or comment? No. The only thing I do want to ask, because I always think it's amazing how creative and efficient we are with limited dollars. Can you just remind us, what is our cost per meal in terms of reimbursed dollars from the federal government? Like, how much are we working with? Because we do hear from a lot of our students, our advocates, our parents who want us to do more, and I think it's remarkable what we're doing. And as I said earlier, there's more to do, but when people hear our cost per meal, I think it changes the conversation.
So for breakfast, we get right now $3.67, but that's only for this year. The reason for that is we're getting 89 cents from the state, but the state has a surplus right now. We don't know what that's going to become in years to come. In addition to that, the federal government gave an extra 15 cents. So if you take that out, you're down to about $2.60 for breakfast, in which we provide a entree, which is whole grain rich, could have protein or may not have protein, has to have a whole cup of fruit. We provide a juice, and then we provide a milk with that too. Milk, again, if they want to have it, they can have it. They don't, they don't. For lunch right now, the reimbursement rate is $5.32. That too, because the federal government is giving an extra 40 cents just for this year. That's still June of 2023. If they take it away, and they take away the 89 cents which we're getting from the state, you can see where we're going to come down to. Cost of food has gone up significantly. So prior to the pandemic, average cost per meal was around $1.50. This is across all segments. So I'm talking about breakfast, lunch, and supper. At this point of time, we're expecting it to be around $2.20, which is inclusive of the increases in cost of supply and cost of goods. Now, if cost of labor goes up more, then that's an added cost. Shared with you what we get. So essentially, in what we get reimbursed, we take care of everything. And I'm very happy to share and very proud of the fact for the past 4 years, we paid our own bills. We haven't taken a penny from the district. And we do have a little bit of a fund balance, which we want to keep as is. So, no, I am not.
I appreciate that too, because I think when we are working with partners to do better, to have food taste better, and we did hear from, or I should say, I heard from Mr. Shin, who had a great pupusa at his school recently. But come and work with us, but see what we can do for $2.20 a meal, and that's really where the creativity lies. So, thank you. We're running a bit behind schedule. I do want to just quickly read this certificate that we have, and then maybe we can take a picture with our advocates. And so, this is a certificate of recognition presented to the Good Food Purchasing Program. The LA Unified Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools express their sincere appreciation to the Good Food Purchasing Program for transforming the way public institutions purchase food. It has created a transparent and equitable food system built on local economies, health, valued workforce, animal welfare, and environmental sustainability. In honor of your 10th anniversary, thank you for your committed dedication and service. So thank you all so much. And maybe we'll come down and I'll ask Ms. Haber, who's in the audience somewhere, to help us take a picture and celebration, and then we'll move on. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving right along, and I do appreciate our folks who are waiting for public comment. There is also the option, everyone who signed up can do it virtually if you'd like, and we can talk to Michael. We've been consistent in our committees of the whole at doing it after, so we've been transparent about when it is. And you're welcome to be here, but we're going to continue our presentations and get to public comment after that, as we've done consistently at these meetings. Okay. Thank you again to the team. Thanks to Mr. Singh and the Good Food Purchasing Program. We're going to now turn to our legislative update and preview of emerging themes for our 2023 advocacy. I'll turn it over to Martha Alvarez, who's the Director of Legislative Affairs and Government Relations. So thank you, Ms. Alvarez. Hold on, let's make sure. Is the mic on?
Hello.
There we go.
Oh, great. Good morning, everyone. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll try to go briefly. Superintendent Carvalho, would you like to make any remarks first?
Just very briefly, I think we came off of a reasonably successful legislative session where we saw record level, historic level appropriations for LAUSD and public education in general across the state of California. We were able to move the needle aggressively in some legislative priorities, whether they became law or were vetoed in the end. And that is why starting this process at this point and certainly benefiting from input from a variety of stakeholders is critically important to position our district favorably in Sacramento. So what Martha Alvarez will detail for you is, by and large, priorities that will have repercussions across the state, but also other elements of policy that are of critical importance to our school system. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. So with that, I'll get started and wait for the PowerPoint to be up. Not the right PowerPoint. In the meantime, I'll just begin by saying my goal will be to give you an overview. Great, thank you so much. So I have a few slides to give you an overview about some of those successes that Superintendent Carvalho mentioned that we were able to endeavor in Sacramento. I'll talk about our process here in LA to get feedback from our various education partners, including parents, and with any feedback that the board members may have. I plan to come back to the board on December 13th to ask for the final approval of the 2023 priorities. So today it is a preview to be able to get feedback from you and any other stakeholders early on. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues within the government relations team, an amazing team that we have that helps support our local advocacy at the state and at the federal level, and I'm grateful for their support in this advocacy that we do every day. This is a grounding slide, just a reminder for anyone watching and those in the audience about the efforts of our Office of Government Relations, what we endeavor to do every day on behalf of the children of LA, thinking about what is our role, which is ensuring that we can advocate as much as we can at all levels of government. As you can see today, the purpose will be to explain to you, be able to provide to you an emerging theme of those topics that we will pursue in 2023. Funding priority, given that the bulk of the money comes from Sacramento and also from the federal government, continues to be a top priority of us as part of our effort to be sustainable in what we do, and being able to also assist with the implementation of the state laws. And part of that work is continuing to maintain and develop relationships with elected officials, and you'll hear a little bit about that today. And this is a slide. So part of our effort to continue to be effective in our work, we have approximately 55 elected officials, including the 15 city council members of the city of LA. We'll have a new mayor come November in a few weeks. We have our mayors and city council of the other 25 jurisdictions that have LA Unified land or students within those jurisdictions, and then the 5 board of supervisors. At the state level, with redistricting, we actually lost 1 state senator that used to have LA Unified schools, but we gained 1 assembly member for a total of 17. It's important for me to mention that we have approximately 1/3 of our delegation that will be turned over, either because they are not seeking re-election due to term limits, or other factors, resignations included. And so it is an opportunity for us to continue to ensure that they understand the needs of our community and the students that we serve. Our work moving forward will continue to be grounded on the Superintendent's 100-day plan and advocacy strategy report that we released in June. As you can see here, several milestones that we will continue to endeavor to pursue over the next several quarters. Where we are now is at the end of quarter 3, beginning of quarter 4. The line number 3 is, that's the preview of today, feedback that we received from a survey that we conducted regarding identifying additional advocacy priorities for 2023. And much of the work that you can see here is continuing to build coalitions, being able to communicate to our partners about key opportunities for engagement throughout our advocacy. And one of those other priorities is continuing to work with the urban school districts to strengthen that advocacy when we can collectively identify priorities of mutual interest. That work is also grounded on the strategic plan that the superintendent and the board adopted in June. These are just a few of the metrics. Much of the work that government relations leads is within Pillar 3C, Leading for Impact. There's about 7 metrics, and these are just 3 examples of the ones that I identified are critical to the work that we do within OGR. We have quarterly briefings that we do with our community partners. Our goal will be to increase that by 50%, coalition letters, and as well as any sponsored legislation in Sacramento. And so with that, I'll quickly give a preview. Again, we're looking ahead in 2023, what the calendar looks like. This year, my team and I were monitoring over 520 bills in Sacramento. Of those, the ones that we were monitoring, 85% of the bills that got signed into law, and then around 14.5 were vetoed, including one of our sponsored bills, Senate Bill 70, to require kindergarten to be a mandatory grade level. I'm pleased to say, as Superintendent Carvalho alluded to, we had a successful track record this year with legislation. These were 5 of our sponsored legislative proposals that were signed into law. Facilities related, one about teacher to administrator ratio to allow us a flexibility to continue. Vision exam, something that we've been working on for a number of years to continue to expand access. Another LA Unified specific, as our declining enrollment continues, we needed to update the education law to allow us to continue have flexibilities for school districts as the size as LA Unified. And last but not least, HR 101 was trying to promote to other school districts to pursue what LA Unified is doing regarding equitable grading policies. These were other bills. I won't go into any detail, just given in the interest of time, but other bills that we were also supportive that became law, signed into law this year. And we also wanted to celebrate the budget accomplishments, many of that, as Superintendent Carvalho mentioned, and new appropriations, but also some changes to the state law that will enable us to continue to receive funding on a rolling average when it comes to student attendance, ongoing increases to LCFF, increased funding to lower class size for TK classrooms, and a few other areas. And as we move towards 2023 and what's ahead and the board's engagement on this work, a friendly reminder about our process. So every year we co-sponsor legislation and we pursue other budget priorities. We engage our board members, our district staff, our students through the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, through the Parent Academy. This is the fourth year that we have engaged parents through a legislative learning effort. We conducted webinars for parents. We have one coming up on November 14th. And we also did a survey with parents seeking their input about ideas for what we could pursue. And then last but not least, our educational partners, which includes our labor partners. They were invited to meet to discuss advocacy priorities and what we could consider, along with their community partners, CBO, and business, Superintendent Business Advisory Council, and many other stakeholders. And as I mentioned beforehand, the goal is to come to the board on December 13th to ask for your approval. Because we have a limited number of bills that we can sponsor every year. This year we had 8 sponsored legislative proposals. This year we're looking at around similar number, between 8 and 10 at most. We are going to continue to be grounded with the strategic plan and any other district policy or priority that the board and superintendent have adopted. Continue to make sure that it is beneficial to the students and the district, and just be mindful about any likelihood of being enacted. As you can see here, the timeline where we are is the November 1st today, the advocacy draft agenda that I'll be unveiling in a few minutes. Again, December 13th, and then we plan to have an aggressive engagement with our partners starting in January to get them engaged in this advocacy. It's important for me, for both transparency and also for just awareness, that the board superintendent get a preview of some of the topics that came out of this survey that I mentioned from parents. We got feedback from students, our education partners, including both labor and community partners, about some what I consider them to be internal issues that could be further explored, either by updating policies and or making additional internal investments if the board and superintendent so desired. We heard this, again, themes. For the purpose of interest of time, I won't go into too much detail, but happy to come back during Q&A if you have more questions. Parents continue to indicate interest in additional stronger parent engagement. There were a number of topics of school safety, whether it be from students and parents and others, bringing up mental health student needs, the presence of school police on campus, drug use. Keep in mind that our engagement with our various partners and students' families was in between September and October, which is right after a few of the unfortunate incidents happened. Mental health supports, college readiness, how do we support students to be prepared for applications and applying for college financial aid, continuing staff shortages, recruitment and retention, housing affordability, and connectivity. Some of the emerging topics that we will likely be bringing forward for the board's consideration in December includes seeking a continuation of the current 2-year pilot that we have with the LA Metro, that we provide free transportation for students through the LA Metro passes. It's at any time of the school year, any time of day or week. That pilot is set to sunset in June of 2023. And one of the big question marks is how will the funding be provided to continue this current pilot. Continuing our current efforts with City of LA and hoping to expand to other municipalities, summer programming through rec and parks, access to pools, and other opportunities for our students to have enrichment activities. Crossing guards continues to be an area that we're in discussions with the City of LA and local municipalities, and how do we help promote any vacancies. With the County of LA, mental health and wellness. How do we expand the use of school facilities for community school parks, especially in communities who do not have access to green space or outdoor space on the afternoons and weekends? Safe passages to and from schools. Continuing to identify any resources to help Atlas Company relocate or permanently be shut down given the impacts to the Jordan High School community. Junior's facilities, and then Superintendent Carvalho and our office has been meeting with other municipalities about any particular municipal compacts we can pursue with local entities. This is the list of proposed, at this point, sponsor legislation that LA Unified would be pursuing. Again, close to between 8 and 10 bills. Some of these may end up being taken off the list come December if we decide that we want to hold off until 2024. Again, I'll quickly go down the list and then I'll be able to turn it back to Q&A in a few minutes. We, this year I mentioned, had SB 70 by Senator Rubio go all the way to the governor's desk. It would have made kindergarten mandatory. A significant, robust coalition of supporters that we had, state PTA, many of our labor partners, children education groups, many supporters. Governor Newsom unfortunately vetoed SB 70. A question mark is whether we reintroduce it next year, given that the state has indicated lower revenue projections, and this bill was vetoed due to fiscal concerns. Another one, and what I also should have said, that next to each bill idea, we indicated the pillar that is aligned to the strategic plan. Again, that will continue to ground the work that we do in OGR. The second one is regarding continuation schools. Current law requires they have a threshold of when students can enroll in continuation schools. In working with Division of Instruction, we have identified that this law is antiquated and maybe needs to be updated so that we can prevent students from dropping out. If we can serve them in an alternative school, continuation school, if that's a better place for them to receive supports. Sunset of a single-gender schools pilot in 2017, LA Unified was the only school district in California to be authorized. You heard this morning from the principal of Yoka. That's one of our 3 current pilot schools. Bala and Gala are the other 2. That is set to sunset on January 1st of 2025. So we'd like to initiate the conversation should we need to be making it into a 2-year bill discussion in Sacramento. The next bullet, 4th, moving ADA to enrollment-based funding is a topic of priority for the superintendent and board for many years. We had SB 830 by Senator Portantino this year. He plans to reintroduce the bill. Again, it's just a matter about finding the state resources, since it's over a $3 billion cost to the state, and the state has less revenues than projected. Overhauling the Medicare reimbursement program. We lose funding, unfortunately, due to the auditing requirements and processes in place, and we want to ensure that we continue to provide services, Medicare services to students, and get properly reimbursed for those services. Next one, a Child Abuse Central Index report. Currently, this information is only available to early education centers. We like to be able to expand access to that for hiring departments, to include also K-12 school districts as we evaluate any candidates applying to come to work for us or other school districts. Shade structures, there's some statutory impediments in law that makes it more costly to be able to construct and install shade structures. We've been able to identify a few areas of the ed code where we can update to make it more cost effective while still maintaining the integrity of the projects. Child welfare and attendance authorization. We know we have a lot of needs for mental health supports for students, and also with student attendance and approaching chronically absent students. We'd like to have the state extend authorization for school districts, including LA Unified, to offer this child welfare and attendance authorization program. Right now, there's only a few offerings through universities, and maybe not as cost effective for the PPS holders, the Pupil Personnel Services counselor holders. So we'd be able to make it as a recruitment mechanism, be able to offer it in-house, cheaper cost as an incentive to hire them. The Office of the Inspector General, the second to last, that is also one that has a sunset of 2025. We're thinking whether to introduce a bill in 2023 or hold off in 2024 to allow the OIG to continue for a few more years. And last but not least, the last item is a facility-related procurement item that also has a sunset only for LA Unified. Looking to make that a permanent authorization for us to continue to benefit from this procurement method and allow the use of local bond funds also. So again, I'll come back. At the state level, we want to encourage the board to continue to allow us to advocate for flexible funding through the local control funding formula. It would be counter to that local discretion that right now school districts have if we were to be asking for any earmarks at the state level. So that's bullet number 2. As the state continues to have lower revenues than projected, a big consideration is, if there was to be any funding for schools, where should that money be allocated? With over a third of the legislature being new after the November election, either because of term limits, because of resignations, or just members not choosing to run for re-election, that means that we have a majority of the legislature that were not around in Sacramento in 2013, when else if it was adopted. So we'd like to really remind them about why local control matters, why the local control accountability plan is important, integral part of our community input sessions, and that means putting any ongoing funding into LCFF and supporting maximum flexibility of any new one-time funding. We are, to Superintendent Carvalho's leadership, working with our ITD and also our finance department, exploring any proposal at the state level to be able to have a dedicated funding source for cybersecurity IT infrastructure. We know it's an area of need for many school districts, including LA Unified, so we're hoping to have something after the superintendent's task force completes its work in middle of December. And then last but not least, any other flexibility that we may need to pursue. on the budget side at the state level that would enable us to be able to serve more students. One of those examples, we currently have a state grant for early education prevention for special education students with disabilities. The law prohibits the funding to be used for TK students, transitional kindergarten. One example of that would be for us to be able to serve students in TK now that you have universal transitional kindergarten programs. And then the last one, because I know it's of interest to Board Member Melvoin and other board members and Superintendent Carvalho, is dual language programs. So one of those examples, there's $15 million in the current budget that allows for computer science authorizations for teachers. It's a $2,500 incentive for teachers to get this computer science authorization. We learned last week that the state program only has had 4 applicants across the state for school districts, LA Unified being one of them. We'd like to use, as a legislature, to expand the use of that $15 million to also include dual language authorizations so we can attract more teachers to go into dual language immersion programs. And then at the federal level, before I turn it back to any feedback or questions from you all, you'll see, I'll pause a minute. You can take a quick look, but many of the priorities are ones we have worked in the past: special education funding, continuation of any E-rate federal program and funding for connectivity, flexibility, as you already heard about school nutrition programs, so we can continue to provide free meals for students. School facility funding, and also the Clean School Bus program to be able to leverage those resources, and anything to do with educator shortage and recruitment. So with that, I welcome any feedback, questions you have, or anything that you think we need to go back to the drawing board to consider integrating as part of local, state, or federal priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. A very dense presentation. I encourage folks to look at the Indeed. The written materials as well. And with that, we'll turn to colleagues for questions, comments, additions. Maybe we'll start this way. Mr. Schmelson.
Slide 7, which partners are invited to the legislative briefings, and what's the current participation rate?
Great. So would you like me to go back to the PowerPoint, or I can just refer to it? Perfect.
Yeah.
So education partners, I mentioned we engage, so we have the Parent Academy, that has been our parents. We had over 500 parents participate in our webinar in September. The next one will be on November 14th from 5 to 7 p.m. I mentioned the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council. There's about 55 students, middle school and high school participants. We had about 35 of them participate in our focus discussion with them about topics of interest, top of mind for them, our student body. I mentioned community partners. We had 61 participants, between 61 and 67. Our last briefing, we had a hybrid, both in-person and in-person meeting on October 14th. So we had about, again, between 61 and 68 were our participants, and that was CBO nonprofit groups, foundations, and others. And then I have also been meeting with invited our labor partners to meet individually, to hear individually from them, reaction to the emerging topics and anything else we should be considering.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmelson. Ms. Garcia, any questions, comments?
I will just say thank you for playing defense. In California, I think we have to continue to inspire people to fund us and to keep saying the class of 2040 is also impacted by COVID, and they're born this year. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Shin.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. I know that she was a student board member in another district, so we have that connection. And we're starting a student advisory focus group for these legislative priorities, so I'm very excited to get that started. The topic I wanted to raise with you was one that I've spoken to Mr. Melvoin about, and that's the section of the Ed Code that deals with Narcan and naloxone in schools. So essentially, for the other board members, the part of the Ed Code that covers how we distributed Narcan to all the schools is basically that teachers and school staff can receive optional trainings, and then they're indemnified for good faith use of Narcan. And so right now, that section of the Ed Code lists those volunteers, those trained school staff and personnel, as employees. And so my concern was that, especially with some of the incidents we've had on campus, they're occurring after school, and a lot of the school staff are contractors. At my school, I know, Ms. Goldberg, you're familiar with the LACER program, they're contractors. And so we were looking at the trainings that they can get, and we found that the contractors could get training through MyPLN, but the reason why they were able to access that was more just because they had a certain type of organizational email, not because they're actually covered by any indemnification. So I was wondering if we could explore talking to one of the legislators and seeing if there are any obstacles to expanding that protection to after-school contractors. Since, I mean, to put it bluntly, if students are using, substances, it's not happening in class in front of the teacher. It's going to be after school or a time like that. And so we want to make it as accessible as possible, and as we want, everyone on the school site as comfortable as possible to potentially save a student's life.
Thank you for that feedback. I'll be happy to touch base with you offline, and also Dr. Malhotra and others from our HHS department to explore what may be the impediment in state law and whether we are able to do it internally or we have to change the law. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Shin. I know he could amend the whole ed code too, but we'll start with that one and then we'll go from there. So thank you. Ms. Goldberg.
Yes, thank you. I have two great needs. One deals with the idea that we're having trouble hiring, staffing shortages. The last time that I was personally involved with staffing shortages was in the 1960s. And what the federal government did was to pass the National Defense Education Act, which then said to people who were thinking about going into teaching that you can get loans up to 100% of your costs for both living as well as going to school tuition. If you teach for 5 years, we will eliminate 10% each year, and half of your student loans will be just gone. If you teach for 5 years in a low-income neighborhood, we'll take off 20%, and eventually we'll get rid of all of your loan in 5 years. That caused huge numbers of people in a time of teaching shortage to consider going into teaching. And I think we need it again, but not just for teachers. We need it for ed aides, we need it for psychiatric social workers, we need it for school employees who right now seem to be saying that the cost of coming into that program is so high that I can't be a PSA counselor, I can't be a PSW, because it'll cost me so much to become one, and I'll have so much debt, and I'll never get out of debt, and the salaries aren't big enough. I'm not going to do it, or if I do it, I'll do it for private practice, but I'm not going to work in a school district. And the last time we had this kind of broad, I can't remember. We've had shortages in specific fields every year, but I can't remember shortages in almost every field. And it's time to raise nationally that a National Defense Education Act can and will have a big impact on those shortages in the future. The other side of that is what I call a salary support bill, which I believe we've never done. But I would like to see Sacramento, when it has, and it would be defined by surpluses, a X number of dollars in surplus. It must use X percentage of them to put into a fund that districts can apply for to increase salaries on a permanent basis, not one time, so that they are able to get people to come to their district. I don't know how it would work. I don't have it set up, but I think we are at a point in time where we may have more surpluses. It would not go into effect on a year that there was either a decline in state revenues or it was the same as the previous year, but not a surplus. But somehow or another, it is time for all state and federal agencies to understand that if they really want excellent schools, they have to do more than just give us a dollar amount that doesn't cover all of this. It doesn't work. We can see that right now when young people tell me they can make more at Winchell's than they can as an ed aide. Okay? And as long as that's true and there's no really hard work at Winchell's, a lot of them are going to go to Winchell's instead of becoming ed aides. So I'm just saying, I think that it is time for us to think very big about staffing shortages at both the state and federal level. That includes housing affordability. At crossing guards, I think that we need to urge them to change their formula. Because I have a school right next to a freeway on-ramp that is desperate for a crossing guard, but it is, quote, just under their criteria. Well, I'm sorry. Those kids are having people. I sat and in 5 minutes, I didn't see a single car stop at the stop sign. Not one where the kids cross. They all boom, 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 trying to get onto the freeway. And yet we can't do anything about that. So I think that's a big one. Community school parks and joint use, the big issues are liability. And it would be nice for the state to opine about how liability should be done in joint use so that we don't continuously battle with the county over, yes, we can open a pool, no, we can't open a pool, yes, we can, no, we can't. That's crazy. And they should all be open in the summer, everywhere. And finally, I think that the shade one that you talked about is critical. We're not going to get cooler in Los Angeles. It's going to get hotter every year. And right now, schools are doing whatever they can until we can start planting trees. And even after you plant the trees, they take years to grow a canopy enough to provide shade. So people are inventing these types of canopies that they're doing, and some of them are being told they have to take them down because the state architect needs to see what? Needs to see where 4 poles go? Really? So I think that's a big one, because I have not been to a single school in Board District 5 that has enough shade on their playground. Not one. Not anywhere in my whole district. So, and it's only going to get hotter. So I think that's a really critical one for this year. Of course, school enrollment's a good idea, but whether it happens, I love the idea of universal kindergarten and TK, but, you know. But there are some things that I think we should be pressing on. One is shortage of staffing. It's not going to go away, and it is national. It's not just us. I have a friend who teaches in an Ohio school in which the parents are being paid to bring the kids to school because they can't find a bus driver to save their lives, okay? They're paying parents to pick up not only their kid, but 3 or 4 other kids. Well, that's outrageous. I mean, really. And so it's nationwide, and it should be something that we can bring forward about all of this. And we have to. And I think as my good colleague Monica Garcia keeps reminding us, we have to be in the leadership of these issues. And we have to organize not just because this is a rural Ohio district, not just the big city schools, everybody's having trouble with hiring people, everybody. So I think this is time for us to begin saying loudly and clearly, this is time for the state and federal government to have something to do with how we're going to maintain high quality personnel at classified and certificated positions in every school district in America. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are exploring a proposal. It's not on the slide since we're still exploring the feasibility of it, about tuition, active tuition forgiveness. Superintendent Carvalho, it was his idea. Would you like to mention more about it?
Sure. Thank you very much. So, Board Member Goldberg, you're absolutely right. Not only are we pursuing some ideas, and we've discussed some of these with the state superintendent as well as other stakeholders, including some college presidents. So in many instances, it is advantageous for post-graduation candidates for positions in educational systems to have the possibility of progressive loan forgiveness. But if we are really to impact proactively vacancies, particularly teachers, the idea of, while you're in school, to have your tuition offset if you agree to early contracts with educational institutions with the same scenario provisions that would envision these individuals being placed in high-need schools, right? Higher level poverty, percentage of students with disabilities, English language limitation. Then we're working on this challenge on both ends of the spectrum, right? Number one, we have an early on ability to catch this talent. Secondly, these folks they really have an incentive to sign on early with school systems, and then the longer they stay, the higher the rate of forgiveness is. So we are quickly advancing these ideas. I think they have legs not only here in the state of California, but also at the federal level.
to imagine that this isn't a discussion in some level literally everywhere in America. I mean, she lives outside of a small town in Ohio, and she says that last month their board began hiring parents to bring the kids to school because they can't find bus drivers to save their lives. So it's small schools, it's big school districts, it's urban, it's rural, and it's because we have consistently and historically underpaid anybody who goes into education, period. We can't continue to do that because people have finally decided that that's true and they don't want to be a part of it.
And I'll just mention very quickly, before turning back to Board Member Melvoin for any questions or feedback he has, because staff shortage is a concern of everyone. The state has invested $1.5 billion over the last 2 years. There's something called the Golden State Teacher Program that provides about up to $20,000 per teacher candidate. There's a teacher residency program. We have applied to get funding for our teachers, going to the pipeline. There's a classified employee program, classified school employees, that if you have an associate degree, the state of California can help you pay for your bachelor's degree and your credential. So there's already existing funding sources, but it does not be sufficient, and so that's why we're exploring other avenues to complement with the state's current investments.
Great, thank you, Ms. Goldberg, Ms. Alvarez, and I know that one of the wins we had this year was around housing for employees, which is also a way to attract talent. So thank you. It was an exciting 2022 legislative session, and I appreciated many of our wins, whether that was at the AB 2339, the vision exams, or ongoing increases to LCFF, or increased funding to lower class size for universal transitional kindergarten classrooms. And I'm excited, as are my colleagues clearly, about what's in here, whether it's shade or enrollment versus ADA, the federal food flexibility, which we discussed in the prior presentation. Just kind of two comments and then one question before moving on. One thing I don't see on here explicitly is advocacy around credentialing requirements and support. And we've heard this come up in a few contexts, whether it's to support the pipeline of bilingual educators or ensure we have qualified incoming TK teachers, or we just heard it in the context of teacher assistants and instructional aides when we were talking about Young Oak Kim Academy. And so I'm wondering if we could engage on those credentialing issues. And when it comes to what Ms. Goldberg was alluding to, the teacher and just educator shortage, I've heard from folks who might have a psychology degree, but they don't have the school psychology degree. And so it's creating that crosswalk where they can say, okay, I have the schooling, how can I quickly get a credential to get into a classroom as a school psychologist? Or same with nursing, or again, our bilingual educators who might be fluent in the language, but have to go through an arduous, expensive credentialing process. And same with those TAs, where for the TA position specifically, it's great to incentivize those folks to go into teaching positions, but there are some aides who just want to be aides, and making sure schools have the flexibility to support them. So that's one thing I'd like to see us explore. And then the other, specifically around dual language, is I appreciate that we have a budgetary ask, but there are some policy adjustments, like the credentialing or looking at class size adjustment or whatever, to make it easier to support our bilingual schools and dual immersion programs. And I know that we have some parents who have reached out to my office and others who are at those schools, who are ready to engage and help us remove barriers to those schools. So besides just the funding allocation, looking at how can we work with MED and others and see what programmatic supports we might need. My question, which we ask every year, is for constituents who are interested in helping us achieve these goals, where should we send them? How can we activate our community around the legislative priorities?
Sure, so thank you. We have a website, government relations. It's achieve.lausd.net/OGR. We do, for the first time this year, have we're creating a listserv just for individuals wanting to keep apprised of what's going on and updates. We also have a tweet handle, LAUSD-OGR. We'll be promoting any advocacy engagement with our community stakeholders, our parents, partners, and others. And then obviously through the board newsletters, our superintendents, press release, we'll continue to do toolkits on advocacy, sample tweets, letters of support, information for calling into Sacramento. A question remains whether Sacramento, the legislature, will allow for remote testimony. We have had that remote access over the last 2.5 years of COVID. Moving into 2023, it's a question mark whether they will allow that to move forward. And I'll follow up also with your office, Mr. Melvoin, on a few of the areas you brought up on credentialing. There is the CSW, the Child Welfare and Attendance Authorization under the legislation. That's one idea is regarding credentialing that we are pursuing. And then we have a catch category under the emerging state budget priorities. The last line of that slide was pursue other technical clarifications and flexibilities as necessary. That's meant to be a catch-all of some of those flexibilities that we may not sponsor legislation, but we can work through an alternative process to pursue those flexibilities.
Yeah, and another area, is if all goes well in a week, this board has supported Prop 28, and this district could get nearly $100 million in arts education. We want to grow the pipeline of arts educators, but we also want to get maybe teaching artists who aren't fully credentialed yet into classrooms. And so that's another area where I could see, especially in Los Angeles of all places, how do we find talented artists, help get them certified so that they could help us in schools as we're growing the pipeline of dedicated arts educators. I think we have one final comment from Mr. Shin, and then we'll move to our final presentation.
Yeah, I just thought of something that I read in the LA Times, and I pulled up the article here. It looks like on the federal level, the president and the Secretary of State appointed someone named Nina Hachigian to a post called the Special Representative for Subnational Diplomacy. And essentially the job is to connect federal government level, states, cities, local governments with foreign governments and seeing what opportunities there are for connection there. And it reminded me of a webinar I went to, sponsored by the district a while ago, and it was basically representatives from various consulates, and they were talking about the programs that they bring to schools. I remember one was like the Japanese consulate sponsoring a Japanese garden at one of the schools, and a scholarship program. I know that the superintendent has met with consuls in Los Angeles before, so that might be someone we want to reach out to. It says she used to be an aide to Mayor Garcetti, so from Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Yeah, great flag. And I was just with Ms. Hajikian a week or two ago. She did work in the Garcetti administration. I think that's a great idea. When it comes to our, I think actually maybe even next week, like the Japanese consulate is doing an event they invited us to for our dual immersion program at Norris Dairy, which we just launched. So great flag, Mr. Shin.
We
Ms.
also
Goldberg.
are working with the Chinese and the consulate about recruiting teachers for our dual language programs, because as they've gone up higher, we need secondary teachers in Mandarin, and so they're helping us find those folks. So there are ways, I agree with you, that consuls can be very useful.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. Appreciate that and your team's efforts. And last but not least, in terms of our presentations, we have our Deputy Chief Facilities Executive, Christina Tokes, and her team talking about the facilities bond-funded program. We want to thank our voters who have supported this district over the last couple of decades. And she will present on some new programs, including greening, bungalow portable removals, and paving plus, as we're calling it, and give us a preview of some major upcoming modernization projects. So, Ms. Tokes.
Good morning, board members, Superintendent, Christina Tokes, Deputy Chief Facilities Executive. As Board Member Melvoin was saying, this is a presentation to provide you with some new projects that you haven't seen before that we'll be starting to bring to the board in November. And these projects come from funding categories that the board approved in 2021 as part of the School Upgrade Program Implementation Plan, and they represent about $1 billion of investments to modernize infrastructure as part of the district's strategic plan. Next slide. Oh, I'm in charge. All right, so the slide, when it comes up, we'll just talk a little bit about the projects that we have currently underway. We have about $6 billion of work underway in design and construction, about 112 construction jobs created through that investment. We are nearing the completion of the first 11 campus modernization projects. This is about $2 billion of work, and really recently celebrated with our school communities the substantial completion of Cleveland, Venice, and the Crenshaw projects. We are continuing work on the 11 Phase 2 comprehensive modernization projects, another $2 billion of investments, and have 10 of those projects underway, and one, Hamilton High School, will be starting shortly. And then we will be bringing in November our third phase of major modernizations. These schools, under the strategic plan of modernizing our campuses, will provide 21st century general and specialty classrooms, ensure earthquake safety, address failing building systems and grounds, provide new landscaping, greening, accessibility upgrades, and paint the entire campus, and remove or replace classroom buildings. We'll have 5 of those campus brought to the board in November, and then the 2 remaining ones that have operational impacts to programs at schools that might need to be considered to be relocated, we'll follow up with those in the second quarter of 2023. Now I want to touch on new programs that we have that have come out both of the district strategic plan to promote joy and wellness, which is such a wonderful goal, as well as supporting sustainable and greening campuses. So the first one is called Outdoor Learning Environment Projects. This includes both addressing the exterior of our campuses and greening them by creating outdoor learning environment classroom spaces, and also removing excess portable classrooms that are no longer needed. So 2 of those which have been priorities, I know, for this district and our board. Basic planning tenets for these projects is they vary across elementary, middle school, and high schools. They really are intended to align with the instructional programs at those schools. We heard during COVID the need for outdoor classroom space. So these are outdoor spaces for instructional use. They include sinks, which is something that we heard from our teachers. They include Wi-Fi access. They include fixed furniture. So the idea that they could be utilized for classroom curriculum. I'm going to just speak briefly on that. We have a lot of lessons learned. We are working with school sites now, and we will make sure that we work closely with M&O so that we can make sure that these investments last for the long term. Oops. So how are these projects identified? Well, we used the foundation of, oopsie, let me make sure I'm on the right slide. Skipping one. There we go. So these projects are based on an assessment of the lack of access to parks, the lack of green space, and the removal of excess portables. Many of you are familiar that we developed a greening index as part of the superintendent's 100-day plan that essentially assigns a green score to identify which schools are the most in need of greening. Then we took that list and added the schools that had portables that could be removed, so and are no longer needed for access capacity, which allows us to take over these essentially facilities that have become a maintenance drain and sometimes a nuisance on the school site. So we are not going to be removing portables at each of these, all the portables at each of these schools. We want to get to as many schools as possible, so we're looking to remove 2 to 4 classrooms. And we'll bring the detailed scope of those projects when we bring those to the board in November. So the first 5 schools we'll be bringing in November are Lockwood, Bright, Humphreys, 52nd, and Commonwealth. You'll see also their correlation on the greening index, and we'll be then bringing the remaining of those projects to the board in the subsequent months. A little bit about the cost. These 5 projects represent about $12 million, and I know we've had questions about why are greening projects so expensive. So these projects range from $2 to $3 million. Because these are classroom space, they do trigger a DSA requirement. So they include accessibility requirements. When we're removing portables, we also have to deal with asbestos rebatement and the demolition costs. We also have to do soils testing, grading. We're providing sinks, as I mentioned, shade shelters, and outdoor furnishings, which contribute to this higher budget. We hope to get to about 20 of these sites, if not more, depending on the budgets for each of these projects. And should future funds be identified, we want to get to as many as possible. I think this clicker had caffeine in the morning. It's jumping ahead. The next one is called the Playground Campus Exterior Upgrades. This is a $3 million investment. We've heard from so many of our school sites, school administrators, parents, community members, that while we've upgraded the structures, the seismic vulnerability, provided technology, the schools still look dilapidated on the outside and they need a refresh. So this project does exactly that. It replaces asphalt in poor condition. It provides landscaping, planters, trees, and greening. Where we do replace asphalt, that will be cool coated. It paints the exterior of all of our buildings, which has not been able to be funded by bond funds, but as we wrap it as part of these holistic projects, we can, and also installs privacy fencing as needed. We will be bringing the first group of these projects to the board in the first quarter of 2023, also continuing with the district's strategic plan of modernizing infrastructure and creating welcoming environments. So if we went straight down the list in order of the criteria that we're using to prioritize these projects, which is age of asphalt, the number of maintenance service calls, the visual inspection of existing conditions, and health and safety concerns, we would get a list that looks something like this. However, we haven't finalized this list, and we need to look at these score differences to ensure that there is equity and we are using the best approach for our future projects. So this is a draft, more to come. And then on the horizon, what you'll begin to see in the beginning of next year are two programs to deals with the inside of classrooms and specialized classrooms. So this one is a $350 million investment of up to 50 schools where we'll be upgrading the interior of classrooms, undertaking many things that we have not been able to do due to lack of funding, particularly on our general funded side. So this one addresses completely refreshing the inside of classrooms with projectors and whiteboards, flexible furniture, electrical upgrades, window blinds, interior paint, and any asbestos floor tiling. And we will be looking at our student and/or facilities equity index from input from stakeholders on how to prioritize those schools, and we'll be coming back to the board with more information on that. And then lastly, we also have a classroom replacement project. So these are for school sites that have a high reliance on portables, and they need those. They have the capacity and students there, and we will be looking to replace those with new specialized classroom buildings, such as chemistry labs, robotics labs, and also addressing greening and landscaping in those areas that will be doing these projects and painting the entire campus. So we get a huge impact to those campuses that we're touching. We plan on bringing those in the third quarter of 2023. That concludes my presentation. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. I think the superintendent has a few comments, and then we'll go to board questions and comments.
Yes, thank you very much. Just two quick comments. Number one, very, very compelling presentation, a wide array of improvement projects. There's one thing that I have to advise the board and the community of, is that we continue to look at maybe more efficient ways of utilizing the dollars. And I know right now we are restricted by the four corners of state policy, but also within legal requirements, historically approved policy by this board that in some cases escalates cost in a lot of the projects. So we are doing an internal review of what those requirements are and seeking improvements to reduce cost without compromising quality or safety and security. One key example that I think everybody is aware of, speaking to a state requirement, is for the purpose of shading, for example. The architectural, engineering, anchoring requirements of the state are onerous. You would think that we're building for the purpose of hurricane resistance, even though the threat here is one of earthquake, but the tension, pressure, weight of some of these modern age structures is not excessive. So there are better ways of doing this, and I know that Mark, in collaboration with Jim and others, are working on this. So expect some of those costs to perhaps be revised in the near future. The second point is, I think this district and this board, when we launched the Greening Index, did revolutionary work. Really, data-driven, through a lens of equity, to identify those schools within areas where the need is greatest. With that said, details make a difference, right? And I cannot really explain to a community why a certain neighborhood would get an investment and another one would not get an investment when the distance in terms of the index score is so small. It's certainly not discernible to a member of the community. So I know if you look at the spread, if you look at the list on priority basis informed by the index, you would say, wait a second, I know my neighborhood, and there are conditions here that aren't acceptable. But the data is the data. So we are giving it a second look and a second cut, okay, to ensure greater diversity of investment, still following the lens of equity, but being a bit more liberal in the interpretation of that index to ensure that a wider array of communities get those same benefits. A strict interpretation of the data may separate, right? As some schools where they will get investment versus others that will not get investment, when the spread, the difference between that index data may be quite small. So we're giving that a second look. I would not fret or stress at this point if you look at the list and say, wait a second, there are no schools in my district. Yes, the strict interpretation of the data would lead you to believe that, but I think that merits a second look. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. Both of those are helpful points. I think I can table 2/3 of my questions knowing that commitment. And on the Ed Code, we've already deputized Mr. Shin to rewrite the whole thing. So he'll add this to it. Ms. Goldberg, start with you and go this way.
You may have noticed that the superintendent was largely looking at me at that last particular sentence, because I was disturbed that out of 30 schools that in Board District 5, which is old, which is decrepitated, which has schools that haven't been touched ever in many years or ever, we have one school out of 30 on that list. And I really can't think of criteria that would yield that because it seems to me that, for example, one of the criteria was how old the school was. Well, Tolan Way was built in 1925 in my district. Let's see, Annandale was built in 1900. Is that old enough, I think, to make some of the criteria? It's a school, and I made a list of the schools in my district which are in need of lots of change. And none of them are on this list. Not a single one of them are on any of your lists. We looked at unsafe and damaged playgrounds, and we have them all over my district, but only Grant Elementary School managed to get on any list. But State Street, which is old, Lillian Street, which is old, Vernon City uses their parking lot as their playground. They use their parking lot as their playground. These schools, somehow, the criteria didn't seem to capture them. In terms of bungalows, Fishburne, Holmes, San Antonio, Heliotrope, Liberty, lots of those schools have had lots of requests to get bungalows. Anyway, all I'm saying is I'm glad to hear that we're looking at this again, because it seems to me that what I really want to know is if I were to take the 10 worst schools in terms of these needs in each board district, what's the difference between the scores that makes them not allowed and these others are, and particularly those that are allowed in, frankly, more affluent communities than I represent. And there is a great resentment in my district that the affluent communities get it first. And eventually, if there's enough money, we get around to the rest of us. Now, I don't believe that's true, and I argue against it all the time. But you see a list of 30 schools, and in Board District 5, there's one that reinforces that belief. That's all I'm trying to raise. Because I know that we'll never have enough money to do all of the things that are needed in all of our districts. So I'm not trying to say me first, but I am saying I hope that we will take a good look again, because I can't think of criteria that have these three parts of it that gets me one school out of 30. And I know what I'll hear. I know exactly what I'll hear. There you go. You know what I'm saying. Okay, thank you. I won't extend.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Mr. Schmelson.
So you looked at Jackie, now look at me, Mr. Superintendent. I have a problem that's kind of the opposite of yours. I have a couple of schools that are absolutely packed to the walls. There's no room for anyone or anything else. The PSW, the PSA, the social workers, they all work in little corners of the library. The library can't be used if they're in there. There's no privacy, there's no walls in there, and I need some schools, a bungalow. I need a portable, sorry, no more bungalow, a portable, and I know they're very, very expensive to move. I hear you, but I know that it involves, you know, internet and gas lines and water lines. I mean, I'm not a fool. I understand it's very expensive, but I have a couple of schools that have been begging me ever since I've been on the board. They just need another portable to make it work. Thank you, Superintendent.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schmelson. Mr. Shin.
I just had a quick question in the spirit of equity. So hypothetically, if there's a school in an affluent neighborhood and let's say the parents get together and say, we want a new playground, is it possible for like the parent group or a PTO to fundraise and, you know, install a new playground on campus? And would that be reflected in your records when you're looking at the age?
Yes. So a school is always available to fundraise, to do a campus improvement. And then we do note that we have records of where every playground structure is in the district, and when that improvement goes on, obviously they coordinate with the facility staff at that school to make sure it meets district safety requirements, and we do put it into our kind of facilities login of all of our structures.
And then my next question is more for the modernization projects. Do those include school security upgrades as well, or are those separate?
So if they are brick and mortar security, they do. We have looked at all kinds of ways to improve security at the perimeter of our buildings and also at our windows, always balancing that our aesthetics don't look like jails or prisons, but really look like colleges. So we can do that by many different design ways of hiding screens or grills. But definitely we know that we don't want to, we should be increasing security, not diminishing it.
And then my last question is about student involvement, since like board members Goldberg and Schmerelson, you know, they're my constituents. So I was just wondering, when you're in the planning process for modernization or looking at renovating a building or something like that, what sorts of opportunities are there for students to give their input on what they'd like to see in the design?
That's a great question. So our campus modernizations, because they are our biggest investments, have a very robust community outreach process. We have kind of a committee of school staff, community stakeholders, and then open community meetings. Students are pulled into the meetings with the school staff and constituents. They're also pulled into the community meetings. And then we also have met individually as requested at that individual school, where we might have a robotics team or a chemistry lab, where we work specifically with the teachers and the students of that school for their specialized spaces. Yep. And I have to ask, how do you like North Hollywood, by the way?
Thank you both. Ms. Garcia.
Oh, welcome to the struggle. I appreciate the different emotions and conversations here. And I welcome, Superintendent, great idea to take a look at the big picture and what worked and why is it like that. And let me just share, as I leave the board, 20 years ago, we could not imagine having 440,000 kids come. Right? 20 years ago, we were living the outcome of this district never building a school for 34 years as we dropped more and more temporary buildings that were not so temporary and highly inefficient for multiple reasons. And we were busing children out of their neighborhood just because we didn't have room for them. So fire, 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 the bell rang, and one of the best things the district did is say, we don't need to build one school and see what happens. We need to build 100. Roy Romer said 160. It ended up being 131,000. Let's just remember, 2 Dodger stadiums have been built inside of our district. Mark, I want to say it's 180,000, Ms. Tokes, I'm sorry, 180,000 seats?
Yes.
180,000 seats, and in my district alone, Legacy Board District 2, not redistricted 2020 District 2, but 40,000 seats built in one board district. So adjustments are necessary. But what I remember, if we are talking about the largest public works program in the country, and a salute to the building trades who have partnered with us all the way through, but for, I mean, along the way, I know there are 2 schools in Board District 2 that didn't get built because, one because of the freeway and particulate matter, and the other one because needs changed in a community. But my point here is that, yes, the challenges are great. When we built new schools, we created haves and have-nots in other ways, but the conversation of what is that criteria is a very valuable conversation to go through. I think when we did Measure Q in 2008, we thought we would be done with that. I think that even still, $6 billion of work, so many celebrations. What I wanted to lift is that our challenge is not overcrowding today. However, we do have substandard spaces, and they're not everywhere, but still there are schools that are going to, I mean, I think we have, I want to say it's in 2 years, we'll have 200 schools that are over 100 years old. So yes, the playground, I mean, in Vernon, here's the challenge. Very small schools did not get support so we've gone from severely overcrowded, which was back then the emergency room and the ICU, and we're still in a space of not well. However, we have experienced great success in the investments that local bond dollars brought us because the state just didn't give it to us, right? So I wanted to ask just straight on, how many jobs are we bringing with this current cycle of investment?
Well, we currently have $6 billion, which is approximately 112,000 jobs. We'll be creating 19,000 jobs with the $1 billion we'll bring in the next 6 months.
Ms. Tokes, I love that you know that number. That is significant. That's a different level of economic impact. We are always interested in the academic impact for sure. But let's remember, when we talk about affluent communities, I really don't know what that means. Is that the homeowner community where San Pedro and Eagle Rock kind of brace us? I know over in the West Side, when we say a low SENI school, that school means 48% of the kids are on free and reduced lunch. Right? So I just want us to be careful when we think about the redistribution of opportunity and equity. It's usually not just over on the West Side, those foreigners over there. It is inside. I know for LA Unified Board District 2, it's the haves and have-nots inside of the lines that I represent. So the board has to wrestle with, what do we address first, right? And I do think the reviewing priorities, and there were schools that were 100% bungalows that never made the list. There are schools, today we have such small schools. In Board District 2, we never had schools of 100. But in the West Side, I remember Marlene Cantor drumming that drum. But we don't close schools, right? So we subsidize schools, and we don't talk about the infrastructure and the support for our desire to continue to build community schools, which is great. I mean, I support it. That's one of the reasons why we did 1,200 resolutions of necessities. The first day on the job for me, I had to approve to say to a homeowner, we have a different idea of public good for your home. It's a very difficult conversation, but the equity conversation really does. I mean, curbs and seismic can take all our money, for sure. But I'm concerned, and Ms. Goldberg, I'm with you. When we did Computers for All, I had one of 47 schools. And Legacy Board District 2 had 100% Title I schools, right? So what is wealth in this district? I always used to tell Ms. Gallatin that I would trade her academic scores for my poverty numbers any day of the week. So Superintendent, the job here has to be not only dealing with equity and what does this organization need for the bond dollars, which are an amazing investment of the public voter, but it also has to be, how does that tie in with our academic goals, right? Because it is very difficult. The board of 1999 that said, let us build not by 7, but by need, that was a courageous effort. And when we said the Data Dig schools are we're going to invest in them because they are in this level of need, that doesn't get like everybody gets one. So I think we need to just be clear that there are deserts of green schools. There's desert of wellness infrastructure for sure. Even as this board will see the Garfield modernization, the gym doesn't get addressed. So, and Big Roosevelt, even though we are at maybe $250 million, the original plan called for $300 million. So it is never do we have enough. We are always making a choice and trade-off on what will that investment do. But for Jordan, for Fremont, for Round 1 Comp Mods, I think there's an academic story and an enrollment story and an attendance story that is linked to the financial facility investment. And that's what I hope, dear board members and superintendent, the next wave, because we're going to ask the voter to support us again. And it was easy when we'd say we're going to build a school and end forced busing, which we did. The next bond was we are going to deal with the haves and have-nots, which we are in the process of doing, and it is when you could tell a school, paint is a big deal. I love seeing the efforts to use the bond dollars for M&O that we just don't have any other way to do it. But, I mean, $1.5 million this board approved to Wilson High School, and it's only the exterior, right? So our needs are great, but I just think I'm sharing my interest in careful to go 7 ways. There is still an investment in a child with a highly functioning school like Mr. Schiff. The opportunity of academic wellness that we offer is not across the board yet. The goal to eliminate portables because they're substandard classrooms and because they are highly inefficient is still something that has to be wrestled with. When do we need it? Maybe it makes a lot of sense for one place, but we know that temporary is not temporary in LA Unified. Because how much does it cost? I have a number like $50,000, but maybe it's more now for a portable. To remove it or to...
to demolish it is about $250,000 once you do the abatement and all of that. To install it, you're probably looking at just under $1 million for all the technology hookups, the DSA approval, the accessibility requirements.
Boy, was my number dated. Yeah. So here we go. I think as you look at community by schools, there will be, where we were going, there will be different needs, and schools will choose what to do. In Board District 2, we have had a focus on high schools because we're trying to build a high school graduation culture and a college-going culture. But in Boyle Heights, the year 2000, 79% of adults over 25 did not have a high school diploma. So I say this to you, and one day there will be a movie and a book perhaps, but the piece here is greening does matter, and it is part of health and wellness, and it is part of academic wellness. But Superintendent, we need to have the conversation with the public about the choices that we make and how we can't do everything, but we can and we have been successful at focusing on and it's a historical challenge that you will continue to deal with, because it's not a today thing or a yesterday thing. It has been decades of underservice to the highest needing groups, but every kid needs support. So every kid and every community, and we want, I mean, it's a big deal if you're a homeowner community and you use your neighborhood school where families are asked to give $1,000 to support a position or a group. And in other places, we're trying to rebuild relationships because kids have gotten on the bus for so long. So I just want to say I'm very, very grateful to the entire facilities team that works to bring us options, because ultimately it is the board and the superintendent to make those decisions. But here's the bottom line is we have never had enough to do all the things we should do. And therefore, we have had to make choices that every board of education has. And what an amazing opportunity to take that strategic plan and put those investment dollars and see how we do, right? Because I think the biggest piece that we need to ask the voters to continue to support us in the infrastructure, and the same thing that we need families to enroll their children in our district, is because of the academic outcomes. So super excited to see the projects come on the 15th. Many thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. And my quick questions seem really uninspiring compared to that, but I appreciate you. I also just want to extend some extra gratitude to the facilities team. I know they were particularly hit by our cyber attack, and many systems were down, and yet that kept them undeterred from doing the work. So thank you, facilities. Two brief questions for me before we conclude. I know Open Data has a place where we can see our bond expenditure dollars. If the public wanted to see specifically the projects with our measure, our funds and progress, is there a place that they can go?
Yes, so part of the 100-day plan that the superintendent released, we included a facilities open data portal that is not currently up and running because of the cyber attack. It is being restored. You can find every board-approved project on that. You could search by topic, greening, schoolyards, sustainability, and it is for our public to be able to find out the status of our projects.
Very exciting. I hear we're close to the restoration on that, so thank you. The $50 million investment around outdoor learning, that is different than the SEEDS augmentation?
Correct.
Okay.
Two different pots of money. SEEDS is for school sites who want to do a greening project. They have resources, and we have kind of a rolling application for $100,000. This one is driven by highest need around the greening index and the need to remove portables. So both are available.
Thank you. And I did have other questions, including, the classroom renovations. One, how that list came together, but also the expenditure seemed to be still $7 million per school for like whiteboards and furniture. But I will table it because, hearing the superintendent talk about those efficiencies, those are the types of things, $350 million, 50 schools, $7 million per school. Want to understand kind of what we're getting for that, and is there an opportunity to expand the list of schools, or really, because that bucket was specifically for those smaller, I think it was painting, whiteboards, flexible furniture, and trying to understand the cost. So I will follow up there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the facilities team and the board for those comments, and thank you to the voters, most importantly, for giving us the opportunity to create 19,000 jobs and update learning environments. Our last just very brief item before our public speakers, and we appreciate your patience, is just, we don't even need to address it, but I'll ask Ms. Garcia if you do want to introduce your resolutions that are coming for action on the 15th?
Oh, thank you very much. So the two things, board members, just for you and the public to be aware, LA Unified has control of what I'm calling the property at 1215 Miramar that I am proposing this board recognize not Mark Hovatter at the moment, but Mike Garcia, who led the Justice for Janitors campaign and named that project, that campus, for projects of the future. And then the other one is to correct or to adjust the naming of Brooklyn Avenue School. It became a SPAN school some 12 years ago, and the community is ready to name it. And I'm going to ask that the board do it by resolution. Thank you. That's it.
Great. So those will be both on the November 15th board meeting. With that, I will turn to Mr. McLean for our public comment. And thank you, speakers, for your patience.
Let's do it. Public comment. Here we go. Yubicela Ruiz, are you here? Yubicela.
Good afternoon to all. I'm here and I'm gonna read something out. I wish that Mr. Carvalho stays here and listens to my public comment. My name is Yubicela Ruiz, and I am the parent of a 4th grade student at Trinity. I am also the parent of a 5th grade student who attended Trinity until this year when his special education program was closed, and he was displaced from the school. My son was displaced from Trinity along with all of the students in the special education program. Because of LAUSD gave away the classrooms to a charter school. Having my son get displaced from Trinity was extremely difficult. It hurt him academically and emotionally. It showed me that my son's education is not valued by the district. Why did he have to leave his school, where he had friends, staff who cared for him, and a community? Last year, the charter school had to pay over allocation fines for taking more space than it needed. This year, LAUSD once again gave more space to the charter school than it legally qualified for. Why is LAUSD giving away space that it doesn't have to? My daughter, who is still at Trinity, is unhappy because she isn't able to do all of the activities and programs they should do to the co-location. There is no space left at our school. Her education is being impacted. We are a community school, but LAUSD is keeping us from reaching our full potential by allowing this co-location. I want our school to be able to grow and thrive as a community school, but that won't be possible if LAUSD allows to co-location to continue. We need space to grow our programs and enrollment. We need services for our children. Our students should not suffer because of a charter school. Our students matter, but to LAUSD, they don't. It feels like LAUSD has chosen the charter over our children. If this was your child's school, I guarantee that you will be here next to me. We are here not just for our own children, but for all of the students at Trinity and all the working parents who cannot be here today. So I am asking you that you stand up for our students and that you live up to your promises to community schools by making sure that our school is not co-located next year. Special education matters. There are kids that can probably not value themselves in the future, but you guys co-locating them tell us literally that you guys don't care. If LAUSD does matter, please save Trinity. My son suffered a month and a half with no special education class or assistance because he was co-located because of a charter school in his school. They're sharing cafeteria, library, playgrounds, everything. There's no space. Please save our school, not just Trinity, as well Baldwin Hills. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Mirna Nolasco. Mirna Nolasco. Mirna Nolasco.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Belén García, necesito traducción.
Señora, voy a ser su traductora. ¿Me escucha?
Sí, gracias.
¿Puede repetir su nombre, por favor?
Belén García.
My name is Belén Garcia and I require interpretation. Thank you.
Antes que nada, yo quisiera pedir un respeto para todos nosotros. ¿Por qué nos están dejando hasta ahorita? Muchos papás que vinieron se tuvieron que retirar porque tienen que recoger a sus niños.
Permíteme. First of all, I want to request respect for all of us. Why have you waited to put us until the very end? Many of us had to leave to go pick up their children.
Ustedes saben muy bien que hoy es un día de salida temprano, salen a la 1:20 y no van a poder comentar porque se tuvieron que ir a recogerlos. Y
You all-
nosotros tenemos que ir volando ahorita saliendo de aquí.
You all are aware that today is a short day. School ends at 1:20 p.m. Many had to leave in order to make that time, and all of the rest of us will be flying out of here to make sure we can pick up our children.
Bueno, nosotros traemos firmas que hemos recolectado de padres de Trinity y se las vamos a dejar aquí.
We have collected signatures from parents at Trinity, and we're going to leave them here for you.
También quiero comentarles que yo tengo una prima que pertenece a la escuela Trinity y está asistiendo al centro Maple, escuela que no le pertenece porque está la escuela charter.
And I want to let you know that I have a cousin who, perdón, señora, la prima.
Sí, mi prima está en la escuela Maple, está en segundo grado
Sí,
y ella
pero
debería
pertenece a Trinity.
Sí, pertenece a Trinity.
My cousin should be going to Trinity, but she's going to the Maple Center, which is not the school because of the charter school.
Ella no debería de estar en una escuela donde están de primer grado a TK. No pertenece a esa escuela. Ella debería de estar en su escuela que le pertenece, tomando clases ahí con sus demás compañeros.
She should not be in a school that's transition kinder to first grade. That is not the grade that she belongs in. She should be at a school where her peers are.
Los demás niños de los demás grados no deberían de estar tomando clases en un auditorio. Es un lugar para eventos, no para tomar clases.
And the children in the other grades shouldn't be taking classes in the auditorium. That is not a room designed for school classrooms.
Les pedimos, por favor, que tomen en serio la educación de nuestros niños, que así como nos importa a nosotros, espero que a ustedes también les importen y tomen acción y desplacen la escuela que no pertenece ahí y les devuelvan sus salones a nuestros niños.
And please take this seriously. For our children's education, you should take it as seriously as we do and take action to return these spaces to the schools that they belong to.
Creo que es todo.
See? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Angelina Gonzalez.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Superintendent and members of the board. My name is Angelica Gonzalez, here along with parents, educators, and ACCE members, all here in support of Trinity Elementary. I am a Trinity Street Elementary alumni and parent of a first grader student that currently attends Maple Primary Center. Trinity Street Elementary has been an important part of our community for over 100 years. Trinity has given many in our family and our community a strong academic foundation. That is why you have seen us and will continue to see us fight tooth and nail for what is fair and right. At the moment, our Trinity students and staff are suffering through an unjust situation since we have students learning out of inadequate spaces. My daughter will begin second grade at Trinity next year, and I am here to make sure that the district that is supposed to support and protect its students protects her right to learn out of a classroom inside her homeschool instead of continuing to allow an outside private entity to greedily encroach on the right to a fair learning space, all while passively standing by as Gabriela Charter continues to take space that you know very well they do not qualify for. A simple slap on the hand by means of a fine that this chartered school is so willing to receive in order to continue to deprive our students of their own space is completely unacceptable. Ever since my daughter was very little, she has been looking forward to one day being part of the same school that her parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins culminated from. She is so excited to be a part of her neighborhood school, where we expect her to continue to excel in the wonderful dual language program she has benefited from, and to become a part of our very own newly elected community school. And I sure do not expect her to spend her second grade in an auditorium or a library. We are asking that LAUSD not offer any co-location space at Trinity next year in order to allow us to succeed as a community school, and for our students to thrive in a learning environment that will meet all of their needs. In addition, I did want to mention that the co-location, this is a side note, the co-location has caused an accident-prone traffic situation on the Adair Street side of the school, where Gabriela Charter has created a makeshift valet system where they ask parents to double park throughout a long stretch of that street, requiring residents, as myself, to drive on the opposite side of the street to get through that street. It's unsafe for the students, it's unsafe for the residents, and it's unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Manuel Santana. Manuel Santana.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Manuel Santana, and I am the community school coordinator for Trinity Street Elementary School. Up until last year, I was one of the 2 special education teachers at Trinity Street who were proud to serve our students and community. I was there for 20 years as a teacher. Unfortunately, this year, LAUSD evicted our special education students from their own school in order to give space to the charter school that co-locates our campus. As a community schools coordinator, I am excited to be doing work with our parents, families, students, and staff, and broader community to make our school even stronger and to transform our school into a community hub. But how am I supposed to do that when we don't even have enough room to meet with the parents? How are the parents supposed to feel committed to our school when their children are in a class that doesn't have a classroom, or when their children have to attend an event on the playground because of the auditorium is now a class? How are our other school staff supposed to meet their needs of our students when we don't even have offices? Trinity's student population is 99% children of color. 97% of students qualify for free or reduced lunch. LAUSD ranks Trinity in its highest concentration of need category. It is among the top 8 highest needs elementary schools in local school district Central. LAUSD says it cares about equity, but taking away classrooms that our students need is the opposite of equity. We care about our school and our community, but it seems that LAUSD doesn't. LAUSD is undermining our success as a community school by giving away so many classrooms to the charter school, classrooms that doesn't even qualify for under the Prop 39. Last year, the charter school was allocated classrooms for 313 students, but only had 259. That means they took 64 students, space for 64 students they didn't enroll. The same thing is happening this year, but LAUSD has given them even more space. I am here to ask you to do the right thing and follow through on your commitment to community schools. Do not allow our school to be co-located next year, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Jacqueline Walker, are you here? Jacqueline Walker? Jacqueline? Okay. Marie Germain? Marie Germain, are you here? All right. Tanya Flores? Tanya Flores?
Good afternoon once again. My name is Tania Flores. I am a parent of 2 currently enrolled at Trinity Street Elementary, as well as the 2nd grade teacher, but I am the intervention coordinator there. I should be at least. And then I am also the co-chapter chair for UTLA, representing Trinity. I have spoken my piece for today, and it's nothing different than what parents and educators here are asking for, right? Our space so that we can thrive as a community school and be able to offer our community the services and resources that they deserve. So please, just let us be able to educate and close that equity gap that you guys talk about and consistently tell us about. We can do that. But we feel as a community that we're not being allowed. Now, I have a letter here that we have composed for you, that we have written to LAUSD, for LAUSD, signed by all of the educators in Trinity Street Elementary, and I brought copies because I wanted to make sure that you all received one. So here we go. Who do I hand this over to? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McLean will make sure all the board members and the superintendent receive it.
copies for each one of you.
Thank you. David Tokovsky, are you here? David Tokovsky.
Good afternoon. I want to applaud you on a thought-provoking series of topics. Remind the public that you should be voting right now. We have all the way till Tuesday to vote. And in particular, since you were discussing facilities, we have our lost cousins, grade 13 and 14, have a facilities bond on the ballot. And let's help them get that through so that we can continue building and growing in LA. With respect to a couple of the topics on the government side, let's make sure that the state bond, which is scheduled to be on the presidential election, doesn't have either harmful things in it that could adversely affect things, or they have positive things, like maybe making a bucket bigger for greening issues, buckets that help this school district and poverty districts, and be careful of the redevelopment people who will probably start coming back in. So we got to make friends with the right housing people and make sure redevelopment doesn't hurt us. On the food side, I would strongly urge you, bring Secretary Vilsack out to see the program that you described. It's really a great effort. Let the secretary see what's going on. Nathan, you're going to rewrite the ed code. Don't do that, okay? If Mr. Melvoin suggested you do that, you can get a waiver to anything in the ed code by going to the state board. It's a lot shorter than trying to change the entire ed code. I want to applaud the superintendent, all of you, for trying to grow the district, and the press conference that tries to build a pipeline from birth into the district. Let me just say, Young Oak, we placed, as a board, when I was on the board, we placed Young Oak right on the rail line, okay? It was on purpose, so that kids could not just be in the neighborhood, but they could come from other places. I didn't hear that. In fact, I think there's only 2% Asian American at that school right in the middle of Koreatown. It's disturbing, and that's something you could look into. Ramona High, we did the same thing. We built it right on the rail line, so teen moms and troubled girls from around the district could take the rail on the yellow line, the gold line, and be right there. Grow the district, grow the enrollment, keep working on it from the early ed, but I want to reiterate affiliated charters. Mr. Schmerlson has the largest CMO in the entire state of affiliated charters. We should be converting some of the independent charters into affiliated by incentives. The campuses that are low enrollment, and you'll soon have to face a policy question of closing schools, if you made those sites, perhaps Trinity, which may be very low enrollment, if you make them affiliated charters adjacent to other cities where Paramount, Compton, and Linwood, kids will come to our district. If you make all of your options programs, the continuation, the various rich programs that we have, affiliated districts that don't have continuation programs like us, they do now. They sneak in illegally, but let's make it appropriate, and let's make this a district of choice by actually creating 10,000, 20,000 of those seats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tokovsky. Andrea Azuma, are you here? Andrea Azuma.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Azuma, and I'm with Kaiser Permanente, and I'm here to provide comment in support of the district's Good Food Purchasing Program. Thriving Schools is Kaiser Permanente's commitment to schools and districts across the country, including in LA Unified, to help ensure that teachers, staff, and students have the support that they need to thrive in learning and in health, and we know that those two go hand in hand. We take an integrated approach to school health, curating the best thinking and guidance on how to keep school communities healthy across the dimensions of physical health, mental health, social health, and equity and access. Kaiser Permanente and LA Unified have had a long history of working together. We've provided grants and sponsorships to a wide variety of community-based organizations working in the district, and also supported programs and activities of a variety of LAUSD schools, from school-based clinics to mentoring programs, job fairs to healthcare workforce pipeline programs. A few examples of these partnerships are with LA's Best and LA Trust for Children's Health, and with the LA Food Policy Council, which developed the Good Food Purchasing Program in 2011. I'm really pleased to be here to recognize LAUSD's achievements and being the first district in the country to adopt a good food purchasing policy 10 years ago. The district and the city demonstrated real leadership in utilizing its food purchasing power and its nutrition service operations to drive positive impacts for local economies, environmental sustainability, a valued workforce, animal welfare, and nutrition. And this action has really inspired school districts, cities, and other public institutions across the country. Like LA Unified, Kaiser Permanente is working hard to be environmentally responsible as a healthcare organization, examining and minimizing our impacts and how we power our facilities, purchase food, medical supplies, and equipment, manage waste, and invest in our communities. And we've made our own goal that by 2025, we will buy all of our food from local sources or farms and producers that use sustainable practices. And we're making progress on our way, but also have a ways to go in improvements that we can make and lessons to learn. We were really pleased to be a part of the working group that informed the LA Food Policy Council's early work to develop the standards that became the Good Food Purchasing Program. We were part of a diverse set of stakeholders and interests coming together all those years ago around the table and worked with so many others to craft a rigorous and yet flexible framework that has found broad appeal across the country and led to measurable impacts in public institutions and ripple effects across the food industry. So we really applaud LAUSD, the Center for Good Food Purchasing, and LAFPC, and we look forward to being here in the future, 10 years from now, to celebrate further accomplishments and more great impact that you can have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Joanne Lowe, are you here? Joanne Lowe?
Hello, my name is Joanne Lowe. I am the former co-executive director of the Food Chain Workers Alliance, a coalition of unions and worker centers representing workers all throughout the food system in the U.S. and Canada. I continue to serve on the Alliance's advisory committee, and I'm here to speak on their behalf. Local Alliance member organizations include UFCW Local 770, the Teamsters Local 63, and the Restaurant Opportunity Center of LA. I also was the co-chair of the LA Food Policy Council working group that developed the Good Food Purchasing Policy. It was a very proud day for our group when LAUSD became the first school district in the country to adopt GFPP, to use its procurement power to support worker organizing in healthy, local, humane, and sustainably produced food. LAUSD's commitment to public accountability and community engagement led the district to not renew a direct contract with a major food manufacturer because of its terrible record of labor violations, following the lead of a community-based coalition and student voices rather than one of the most powerful food companies in the world. This leadership was a model for the country. The work of LAUSD to implement GFPP convinced organizers, advocates, and institutions across the country that the program could and should be replicated in other U.S. cities. We are now supporting efforts in Illinois and New York seeking to apply GFPP to state-level purchasing. One consistent challenge, though, in implementation across all institutions has been supplier transparency. As you know, access to supplier sourcing data is critical to assessing your supply chain, knowing which workers are affected and which suppliers to hold accountable. We've learned that suppliers must be required through policy and contracts to share their sourcing data. Equally important is for institutions to publicly share who their suppliers are. That way, community and worker partners can better support you as informed partners in implementation. We look forward to continuing to lift up community expertise that can support the shifts in purchasing you want to make, and for LAUSD to continue to lead the way in building transparent supply chains by sharing your data publicly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erica Velarde Espinoza, are you here? Erica.
Hello, my name is Erica Velarde Espinoza.
I am the Education Chair of the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council, but today I'm here as a parent of 2 LAUSD students. As you all know, there was a stabbing at Marshall a few weeks ago. While the local district central has been empathetic and responsive and seems to be helping the best they can, there's no telling how long a response can take. And with the upcoming changes to local district central, who knows if anything will follow through. So I'm here today to advocate for the simple request of immediately updating and reinforcing Marshall fences that have been repeatedly requested and install more cameras to aid in perimeter security. The gate requests have been ongoing prior to the event, and while there is no guarantee they would have stopped the intruder, the violence, the fence reinforcement will make it harder to enter the school. Marshall is an iconic high school, and this event took our neighborhood, Marshall's almost 2,300 students, and many others by surprise. While every news channel in Los Angeles has reported on it, neither our school board representative, Ms. Garcia, nor the superintendent, Mr. Cavallo, have issued so much as a simple statement. I'm personally offended that our board member, Monica Garcia, has not mentioned even a word about this situation to the LAUSD parents and students. She told me that it was nothing more than a one-off situation, and celebrating football games seems more important than addressing parents concerned for their children's safety. As this election dawns, and the seat you have held for the last 16 years will change hands, I hope your protege, Maria Brenes, if elected, does not take the same indifferent attitude towards Marshall that you are demonstrating. With students coming from 100 different zip codes and more total students at the low income level than most high schools in LAUSD, Marshall does qualify as a most in-need school as any of your precious Eastside schools. Just because of its location or the neighborhood demographic, the dire need for support is the dire need for extra support this student body has is not to be disregarded. I have a middle schooler with many friends his age and who go to King Middle School, a natural feeder school for Marshall. This event has sent many of these parents reeling over the decision to send their kids to Marshall or any LAUSD high school. My high schooler and her friends who attend Marshall are worried, feel unsafe, and unheard by the district, and this event has affected their mental health while at school. LAUSD is facing declining enrollment, student mental health issues, drug dependency, and gang violence. Why are events like this not addressed when they happen? Why does the school board not seem to care about the safety situations within our school and making students feel safe? Why are safety measures not implemented immediately and efforts conveyed to the parents and students they are happening? As a huge supporter of public school, I can personally try to convince as many people that Marshall is safe, but without statements from our school board member and the superintendent's acknowledgement, how can I back that up? Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Amber Marie Irving, are you on the line? Amber Marie Irving, if you're on the line, press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Amber Marie Irving, and I am a proud parent of a second grader at Baldwin Hills Pilot Elementary and Gifted High Ability Magnet. 2 of my older children attended Baldwin, and they were in the Gifted Magnet. My 19-year-old daughter, who's now a junior studying computer science at UC Irvine, and my son, who's a 7th grader at Palms Gifted Magnet. Currently, like I said, I have a 2nd grade son there. Baldwin is now the victim of a co-located charter eating away at our school called New LA. So what's different about our schools? Baldwin Hills and Trinity are majority Black and brown schools, and we're being treated differently than our white counterparts. As a parent who experienced the school both pre and post-charter encroachment, the differences are startling. The same year we are approved to be a pilot school with innovative, culturally responsive education, specialized in educating children of color and allowing them to learn about African American culture, as well as from a multicultural perspective, the district approved a charter to encroach on our campus. It started with 3 classrooms. Now they have 8. They took our computer lab. They took our music room. They took our art room. They took the rooms of all 3 of our after-school programs, and we're down to 1, and they have no dedicated space. We had robotics, engineering, yoga, chess, all enrichment activities now unhoused. We are a 2021 California Distinguished School whose numbers and performances are off the charts. A UCLA study said that our school is the only school in the LAUSD championing Black and brown children. and you can find that study online. LAUSD, to avoid lawsuits by charters, you go above and beyond to make them comfortable. But what about us? We are literally the only gifted magnet in all of LAUSD to have a co-located charter on campus. The only one. Again, what's the difference in our school? Our students are majority Black and brown. The LAUSD uses Prop 39 to cannibalize its own schools, selling to the highest bidder or loudest yeller. How can you profess to want us to feel treated fairly? If it was a majority Caucasian school, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Could you imagine a charter being allowed to take the computer lab of a majority white gifted magnet? We're also an official community school. You as a board can decide not to renew New LA's charter simply because of the fact that we are a community school. Do you know where the director of our community school is officed? In our parent center. How is that fair? Trinity has 2 second-grade classrooms that meet in a primary school 2 blocks away in order to make room for a charter school. What kind of sense does that make? Forced co-location is taking valuable classrooms, valuable rooms, and enrichment activities, and that is discrimination. Because of this, I, Reverend Dr. Amber Marie Irving, am moving forward with suing the LAUSD for discrimination against our children. Separate is not equal. Forced co-location and taking computer labs, classrooms, and enrichment activities from Black and brown students and community schools that support them is discrimination, no matter how you slice it. And we'll open it up to a class action because whether deliberately or unintentionally, you are hurting our students of color. So I feel that there are more nefarious forces at work as you silence the voices of parents by getting rid of all of the once strong and powerful district committees for parents, including all parent advisory committees that had a real say at one point in time. You make it virtually impossible for parents to unite within the district and force us to turn to nonprofits to attempt to get our voices heard. Anybody who wants to learn about the lawsuit can email me personally, ambermarie@stanfordalumni.org, or our group at fightforbaldwin@gmail.com. And this is not just happening to us, but it's happening too often. Black and brown students are not giving a fair shake. And our school is an excellent school, and we don't deserve it. Please remove New LA from our campus, remove Trinity's co-located charter from their campus, and fight for our schools. It makes no sense for us to have a board that supports charters over its own schools. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Kinley LaGrange, are you on the line? Kinley LaGrange, if you're on the line, press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Kinley LaGrange, if you're on the line, press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin.
Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Kinley LaGrange. I'm a parent of a first grader at Baldwin Hills Elementary Gifted Pilot and Magnet School. We're also a community school, and we're very proud to be one. To deliver on your vision and promise to support and expand the community schools model, you must take action immediately to ensure we are not co-located by a charter school next year. Audit New LA charter and give Baldwin Hills back 2 of the 8 classrooms currently co-located, which will allow us to implement critical programs and services that our community desperately needs. Please do this now. Quoted from the LAUSD Achieve website, a community school addresses issues of structural poverty and racism by providing a learning environment where all children can learn and thrive. Well, we are currently unable to do this as a co-located school, and our children, close to 80% of them Black students and 98% minority ethnicities, suffer because of this careless decision to allow us to be co-located. They deserve better. Ms. Goldberg, thank you for your comment earlier, recognizing the issue with our community school being co-located and asking the board to reconsider this. We hope that Dr. McKenna, District 1, will agree and that action will be taken immediately. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Rita Richard, are you on the line? Rita Richard, if you're on the line, press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Rita Richard.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. My name is Rita Richards. I'm actually a grandparent to a kindergartner and a second grader, and I have three nieces actually that go there between kindergarten and third grade. We've got a history as a family working on 6 generations that has gone to school. It's a community school, yet children in our community aren't being able to be allowed not just to go to school, but to thrive while they're there. As a previous parent mentioned, they've taken our music room. Because we are a pilot magnet and because we are so devoted to them wanting to know that there's more than just them in the world. They're not the only culture that's here. Here's other cultures that are around with us, but yet we're not being given that space in our own schools, which concerns us not just as parents, but as alumni and as future parents and alumni. This should just not be the case. It started out as something small. I've had nieces and nephews that went there before the co-location. And now my grandchildren are there doing it, and seeing the difference is it's just beyond horrible. You can't think, you're like, okay, you think if we're gonna share 1 room, 2 rooms, now we're up to 8 rooms. Now we're not able to provide special services for children that are in our district, in our community. Whether it's because maybe they need speech help, not a speech therapist available. Maybe there's some that need the pause program. They're having to do that because they're nonverbal at another school with 5 or 6 other children from our school going there versus being able to have that service where we are. And we voted on this before. We said, no, we didn't want to have the charter school. No, we don't want things expanded where they have even more access. Our children aren't even being allowed to go to the bathroom at will because now we've got this charter school that will take an entire class to the restroom. So if you got 20, 30 kids going to the restroom at a time, how are other children going to be allowed to go use those same resources? We've had violence that's happened between the children and the children of the charter school. One incident which included my niece, another incident where a young man had his glasses broken. There's been no repercussion for that. We've drawn it to their attention. The principal has reacted, but we don't see any change in the charter school's behavior. I just think it's time for them to have their own location. Other charter schools have done that. Other co-locations have done that. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Danielle Ravel, are you on the line? Danielle Ravel, if you are, press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Danielle Ravel, this concludes public comment.
Thank you, Mr. McLean, and thank you all. I do have one adjourning motion, unfortunately, and I don't know if I've heard of others. But I'd like today, I will begin again. I'd like to adjourn today's meeting in memory of Michael Stenger, who served the community at Wallgrove Elementary School for almost 30 years. Michael was a kind and loving person who cared deeply about all the students at the school. He was a true friend and partner at Wallgrove, and over the past decades, he assisted with volunteer tutoring, helped form the Parent Booster Club from 2 parents into the thriving organization it is today, recruited neighborhood families back to the school, introduced more community partners for projects like book fairs, musicals, painting, and greening, and even started the school gardens, which became the beloved Wallgrove Wildlands that still hold a special place on that campus. His legacy will live on through the years of service and innumerable contributions he made to the Wallgrove community, who feels so grateful for his life well lived for others. He will be missed. Thank you all for a productive committee of the whole, and look forward to seeing everyone in a couple of weeks for our board meeting. Thank you all.